Hello friends, introducing this channel Theater 1. This channel will discuss the storyline and summary of a film. This episode, Theater 1 will discuss the storyline of a TV series released in 2005. Entitled Prison Break, this series gets a fairly high rating on IMDB, which is 8.9. Without waiting too long, let's start the intro. This man named Michael Scofield is an extraordinary genius with crazy ideas. This man is the main character in this film. This tattoo is the key in the movie Prison Break. Later we will explain what the tattoo is for. The scene continues with Scofield, who is cleaning up and throwing away all the files and data in an apartment. Archive, what is it? Will be answered later. The next day, the day that Scofield had been waiting for, turned out to be a bank robbery. He just gave up without any resistance, as if he had deliberately wanted to be arrested by the police from the start. At trial, the judge seemed confused with the defendant, because rarely did a defendant speak truthfully and plead guilty. And his lawyer was confused by what Scofield said. The lawyer is named Veronica, who is also the ex-boyfriend of Scofield's brother. Finally, the judge decided to sentence Michael Scofield to 5 years in prison. But strangely, he smiled when he was declared a convict. Michael Scofield is being held at the Fox River Juliet prison in Illinois. This is a picture of the prison. Let me introduce him. He is Brad Bullock, the head of the prison warden. He becomes a very annoying character in this film. Furthermore, it was in this cell that Scofield was detained, accompanied by a cellmate named Fernando Sucker. The contents of this prison are quite barbaric as well. Need a strong mentality to survive in this prison. And finally, we are told why Michael Scofield deliberately threw himself in prison, namely Lincoln Burroughs. He is the brother of Michael Scofield. He is a death row inmate who will be executed in 1 month because he has killed the brother of the vice president. Imagine, what punishment is appropriate for the murder of the brother of the vice president? So the intention of Michael Scofield robbing the bank is because he deliberately wants to go to prison to free his brother by taking his brother out of prison. Because he was sure that his brother did not commit the murder, and he was simply framed and slandered. Scene switches in the clinic in prison. Introducing this is Dr. Sara Tancredi, a doctor who treats sick people in prison. She is also the son of a governor. Here Scofield says seductions to attract the doctor's heart.
That was just my senior quote.
Then when Dr. Sara comes out, Michael Scofield puts origami paper in the gap of the drain hole. What for? We will explain later. The scene changed. Burrow was surprised when he saw the figure of her in the same prison as him. And Michael Scofield was there explaining his intentions and goals.
I'm getting you out of here.
Doctor still refused because it was an impossible feat. So the archives and data at the beginning of the film are strategies to escape from prison that have been carefully prepared by Scofield. Many missions must be carried out patiently by Scofield, so that the escape plan does not happen randomly. Well, this is what makes this film very interesting, because there are so many ways that Michael Scofield to escape from prison. River Fox. Michael Scofield doesn't just choose anyone before he goes to prison. He has researched any inmates who have the potential and ability to help him in prison.
No more tests. Promise. How'd you know her?
Introduce him, Charles Westmoreland. Scofield said to Charles that he knew his wife, and he claimed to know a lot about Charles. Even Scofield said he knew who Charles really was. D.B. Cooper, the man who escaped from a plane 30 years ago with $1.5 million in cash, but Charles denied that he was not D.B. Cooper. One afternoon, Scofield is summoned by Warden Pope. The warden asks why a smart man with a bachelor's degree in architect is in this place. It is impossible for an architect to be willing to rob a bank because he has no money. Because the warden knows that, so he wants to take personal advantage by asking the architect Michael Scofield to help complete the mock-up of the Taj Mahal for his wife's birthday present, but Scofield refuses. Next, Veronica comes to see Scofield. She knows now Scofield's intentions and goals are to go to prison. And here Scofield convinces Veronica to investigate the evidence for the murder of the vice president's brother. Because Scofield believes this evidence has been manipulated by someone very evil. Scene changes introduce him as John Abruzzi. He is a dangerous mafia kingpin. His mayfiness is still carried over in prison. He has a position among the inmates, namely the coordinator of the working inmates who are given the task of cleaning or remodeling. Michael Scofield wants to join Abruzzi's subordinates as part of a plan to get out of prison. But joining is not that easy. Scofield has thought of a way from a long time ago. Scofield gave Abruzzi a code in the form of origami bird paper. Moments later came a call from Abruzzi's partner, who said he got a message containing an origami bird and where the message contained a photo containing Fibonacci. He was the person who had been the target of his mafia gang Abruzzi. So this Scofield knows where Fibonacci is. Abruzzi immediately goes to Scofield and orders Scofield to immediately tell where Fibonacci is. But Scofield refuses because that's not how the game is played. In the end, Scofield is beaten by Abruzzi's men for refusing to give the information. Because causing trouble, Scofield is sentenced to 90 days in solitary confinement. But Scofield negotiates not to be put in there. He accepted an offer to repair the warden's mock-up of the Taj Mahal.
What'd you say?
Introducing, this is Burroughs' ex-wife, Lisa, and this is LG's biological child. From Burrough looks how LG, when visiting his father, he was very disappointed in his father. But the father could not do much to prove his innocence. Continued, Scofield went to Dr. Sarah, who asked for insulin injections because he claimed to have a history of diabetes. The doctor said, "I would not give insulin to a person who does not have diabetes." Scofield. It should be noted that people with type 1 diabetes cannot produce their own insulin hormone. So they need insulin injections, because Scofield pretends to be sick, so he has to take insulin-blocking drugs in his body. So Scofield must find the drug. Introducing, this is Synod or Franklin. He's the pharmacist for the inmates, or he's the inmate with access to drugs in prison. This is where Scofield gets his insulin blocker, but it's not free. Good news came from a warden. He gave workers access so that now Scofield is officially Abruzzi's subordinate worker. He can now talk freely with his brother because his brother is a worker too. Scofield leaked a little of his plan to his brother. And what was surprising was the architect of the Fox River prison where they were detained turned out to be the work of Michael Scofield. And the tattoo that was told earlier was not just any tattoo, but it was the blueprint of Fox River prison and all the strategies and plans to escape from prison. The next scene shows a scene where Scofield and D.B. Cooper are chatting in the prison yard. Scofield mentions a little about his escape from prison and D.B. Cooper just takes it lightly. D.B. Cooper said that there would be a war between blacks and whites, because the friction that often happened was long enough. War is like a ticking time bomb, just waiting for the time to explode. He moves into the prison cell. The prison guards conduct a cell raid, and the inmates throw away their forbidden items. Scofield is caught holding Sucker's knife, and the warden comes, and Sucker is the one who is arrested because Scofield is defended by the warden Pope. Pope doesn't want it if Scofield is isolated because later he won't be able to help Pope make a mock-up of the Taj Mahal. Move to the Scofield church to talk to his brother. His brother asked how to escape from Fox River prison. Scofield replies the trick is to escape through the medical room. Therein lies the weak point of prison security. Scofield Schofield told me that he needed Pubnac to lower his insulin, so he regularly went to the medical room for insulin injection. Now, Schofield's routine of entering the medical room will be used to prepare an escape route. The scene changes. It looks like Schofield is looking for something on the lawn table. Apparently he is looking for a bolt. Because he is the architect, he knows what size bolt is in which position. While Schofield was trying to turn a bolt, a man came. Introduce him. He is Teabag, who has kidnapped 6 boys and girls, and he even raped and killed them sadistically. Teabag invites Schofield to join as his subordinate, because it will hear as a white war against blacks. If Schofield wants to join, Teabag can protect and guarantee his safety. But Schofield refuses and leaves, leaving the bolt that hasn't been picked up yet. Next, Schofield asked Franklin the whereabouts of the Pubnac drug he asked for. Schofield asked for the item tonight. Franklin was very curious to know what the function of the Pubnac was. Schofield also continued to take the bolt, but his actions were caught by Teabag. The bolt was taken and confiscated by him. Schofield's plan failed. The scene changed. The curious nature of the Bullock looking for faults made him check Schofield's cell, and finally he found something when he rubbed a blank paper. The paper read Schweitzer Allen 11,121,147. Bullock tried to find information through the database of prisoners who had languished in River Fox. But Bullock didn't get any info. So what code is it? Furthermore, Abruzzi had 2 guests. The guests were his former subordinates when he was not in prison. They came to ask Abruzzi to find info on Fibonacci's whereabouts as soon as possible. Otherwise, Fibonacci could testify in court about the crimes of the Abruzzi Mafia. Abruzzi promised to get Fibonacci info as soon as possible. Schofield comes to his Teabag cell to retrieve the bolts he confiscated. But he was caught by Teabag, already wet. He said he wanted to join Teabag's men. Teabag is not that easy to believe. He ordered Schofield to prove it by killing the black race when the war started. The conversation was heard by the black race, namely the drug dealer Franklin. Bullock asked the name, and Schofield answered casually. Franklin already got his Pubnac. But because Franklin thinks Schofield is working with Teabag to kill the black race, Franklin didn't give his Pubnac to Schofield, even though Schofield said it was just a misunderstanding. The scene moves. Veronica, who is investigating the Burroughs case, asks for a recording of the shooting and murder of her ex-boyfriend. He was also given a copy of the CCTV recording, and when Veronica watched it, it was true that in the video it was Burrough that very clearly shot the vice president's brother. Veronica came to visit the Burrough. Here Veronica was very angry because it was clear on CCTV that the Burrough had shot, but Burrough insisted that he was framed. He said that he never pulled the trigger. The vice president's brother had been dead from the start before Burrough came to the scene. He was ordered by his friend Crab Simmons to pay off his debt. Someone wants to set it up to make it look as if Burrough is the culprit. Hearing this story, Veronica couldn't believe it anymore and left her ex-boyfriend. The scene changes. Introduce him to Kellerman, a secret agent who was sent to cover up the truth of the Burrough case so he doesn't get caught. Kellerman questioned who asked for a copy of the CCTV footage, and he was told. Veronica looks for Crab Simmons, who orders the Burroughs to carry out the act of pointing a gun, so that the debt is considered paid off, but his mother said Crab was dead. Letitia calls to come and chat with Veronica. She is the boyfriend of Crab Simmons. She tells the strangeness of her boyfriend's death. Coincidentally, he committed suicide a week after the death of the vice president's brother. Letitia advised to be careful of the mastermind behind all this. Letitia left with a very frightened face. Here Agent Kellerman calls with a woman. She reports that a little mouse is trying to break the secret of the Burroughs case. This woman was the real criminal who set up the slanderous murder by the Burroughs. Seen back in prison, all the prisoners were ordered to stand in front of the cell. But here, war broke out. Schofield is looking for his men Teabag. He just wants his bolt back. But the assistant Teabag was killed by a black man, and he hugged Schofield. But unfortunately, it was Schofield who was accused of killing him. Teabag was here furious with Schofield. Schofield is rubbing a bolt on the floor to sand it. It turns out that the bolt was used to open the bolt in the sink hole. The tattoo guide works again. There is a black circle that is useful for equalizing the size of the bolt lock, and we can see it turns out that the Schweitzer code is the brand of the sink and Allen is the name of the bolt. And the code 11,121,147 is the ID of the bolt. No wonder Bellick couldn't guess it. Carry on. Because Franklin thought Schofield had killed a white man, Franklin also gave him the pugnac, and soon Schofield ate it even though it was too late. When the blood draw started, Schofield feared that his pubic had not reacted. And here it was. He also tested positive for diabetes. He lacks insulin. So he will often meet this beautiful doctor for injections. Scene changing, Schofield invited to enter the warehouse by Abruzzi's crew. And it turns out that Schofield is being forced to reveal the whereabouts of Fibonacci. Abrasion threatens if he doesn't tell his toe will be cut off. When Schofield was threatened with having his toe cut off by Abruzzi and the others, and Abruzzi did, they were caught by the guards and Schofield was immediately taken to the medical room. Abruzzi and his friends said that it was just a normal accident. Because he was assisted by Bellick, then Abruzzi escaped. Schofield was reluctant to tell what happened to Dr. Sara, and the case was closed as if it were an ordinary accident. Continue hearing this. Burroughs very angry to see his sister treated like that. Burroughs says he will kill Abruzzi. But Schofield forbids because he is the key to their plan to escape from Fox River. Schofield needs Abruzzi because he owns a fictitious airline company. So Schofield asked Abruzzi to prepare an airplane to escape later after they managed to escape from prison. It continues to be seen that Sucker is released from the isolation room. Schofield tells that he will invite Sucker to run away. The reason is because Sucker is a cellmate. It would be difficult if his cellmates didn't cooperate with him, where all his escape plans were leaked by him. Hearing this, Burrow was angry and disagreed. Sucker calls her fiancé Maricruz, but it's her future mother-in-law who picks up. He says that Maricruz is out with another man. Here Maricruz's mother expresses her disapproval of her son's relationship with Sucker because he is a prisoner. Suddenly this makes Sucker disappointed. The cell Schofield here will carry out a plan called the cell test. And here it looks like he has a cell phone. How can he get it? And what plan is it? Scene changes. Teabag comes to a workshop. He comes to avenge the death of his subordinates to Schofield. He asks his colleagues there to provide a tool that can kill slowly so that the victim does not die immediately but feels the pain first. And the man also gave a knife that could tear the intestines roughly and could infect the person who was stabbed so that they would die slowly from infection. Teabag took the knife. The scene moves to where Schofield is working. Schofield takes out his cell phone and puts it in a box. Sucker sees this and scolds him, but Schofield told Sucker to shut up. Scene changes. Veronica looking for a boyfriend from Crab Simon, namely Letitia. She goes to Letitia's apartment to ask about the Burrow case because she is the one who knows the secret of the case. When Veronica goes into her room, she is pointed at by a gun and Letitia thinks Veronica is a bad person. But here Veronica assures Letitia she'll be fine and tells her to tell her everything there is to know about Crab Simons and the Burrow case. Arriving at Veronica's office, Letitia told her that Crab Simon had an unknown man who paid off the Burrows' debt on the condition that Crab Simon had to give an order to the Burrows. Letitia said the unknown man was like a government person wearing a very neat suit. Not long after, Agent Kellerman came to Veronica's room. He introduces that he is a guard of President, and he mentions the CCTV footage that Veronica asked for. He said that it was very clear that Burrow was the killer of the president's brother. But if Veronica found new evidence, don't hesitate to tell us. Kellerman said goodbye because Letitia didn't come back. Veronica checked her room and it wasn't there. Veronica was frantically looking for him. Back at the prison, Abruzzi had another guest of his men. Here Abruzzi confirms that he is trying to find Fibonacci info by providing evidence of a cut-off Schofield's toe. This former subordinate of Abruzzi poses a threat to the safety of his son Abruzzi if he does not quickly find out where Fibonacci is. Abruzzi was thinking hard. Next, Burrow tells Bellick that someone is using a cell phone in the prison and Burrow says he is Sucker. Bellick comes to ask Sucker the whereabouts of the cell phone. If she doesn't tell, then she won't get a visit to visit her fiancé. But it turns out that here Sucker chooses to keep his mouth shut to protect his cellmate, Schofield, when he returns to work. It turns out that Schofield tells him that he was only testing Sucker. It's just soap made into a cell phone, because Sucker kept his mouth shut. He passed the test. So Schofield tells of his escape plan. But Sucker is reluctant to join because he only has to wait 16 months for him to be released from prison. It turns out that Sucker is disappointed with Schofield's actions and decides to move rooms because they didn't want to be stuck in further problems. The scene changes. Abruzzi invites cooperation to the teabag to destroy the Schofield. He was planning something. Schofield was brought into a room by Abruzzi and he was met by Teabag. When Teabag was about to finish off Schofield, it was Teabag who was beaten by Abruzzi. Here Abruzzi apologizes for his mistake. He will follow Schofield's plan. Schofield also told him his escape plan and he asked to prepare a plane, but he didn't mention the time and day, just in case the Abruzzi betrayed him. Bellick comes to Schofield's cell to inform him that there will be a replacement cellmate, Sucker. His friend was from a psychiatric ward prisoner. He is a haywire madman who just recovered, so he was transferred to a normal prison. What a new problem for Schofield. Agent Kellerman and his partner were seen in a deserted place, and it turned out that they were the ones who kidnapped Letitia, and they sadistically killed the innocent Letitia. Back in Schofield's cell trying to open the sink with the bolt. It turns out that Haywire hasn't fallen asleep yet. He said he had a neuroanatomic lesion, or meaning he couldn't sleep at all. The scene switches to Schofield trying to break into the sink when the madman is in a prison cell. He notices something strange with Schofield's tattoo. The doctor came. This madman was still taking medicine regularly to keep him from going crazy again. He also ate the medicine but immediately vomited it back. He said they wanted to make him stupid with the drug. The madman continued wanting to see Schofield's tattoo, but Schofield objected. In the field, Schofield is ignored by Sucker, and Schofield sees his tattoo and he carries out a plan called Cute Poison. What's the plan again? Okay. It will be answered soon. Because Schofield is Pope's favorite child. Schofield requests that his prison cell be moved, but Pope can't do things like that. There must still be a strong reason to be able to move cells, such as because he was hurt or harassed by his cellmate. Veronica came to see the burro, and she said she now believed what the burro said. And Veronica found the witness, Letitia, but she's gone now. Burro asks about Veronica's fiancé, and Veronica said that she canceled it. Here Burro feels happy and can't hide his feeling that Burro still has the same feeling.
We're a lousy liar.
The madman saw that Schofield had finished taking a bath. He also saw Schofield's tattoo clearly. This made Schofield uncomfortable and he left. Sucker has a guest. It turns out that she is Maricruz's new friend. He comes to Sucker to declare that Maricruz has become a friend.
I'm not the one who's in prison.
And Schofield picked up the chemical in the warehouse. Copper polonium sulfur oxide. Bellick almost caught his action, but fortunately Schofield has a secret pocket, and he escapes. Sucker calls Maricruz to ask for an explanation. Maricruz admits that he is worried about his future. He is afraid of getting old, so he is desperate to get married. He was reluctant to wait for 16 months. She decided to marry another man. Sucker is also disappointed. This madman is getting crazy. He wants to know the picture of the tattoo. He scratched a razor blade on Schofield's shirt while sleeping, suddenly shocked Schofield. The madman said there was a maze in his tattoo. So behind his madness, he has the genius of being able to see a code from an image. Veronica met with the police who arrested the burro. The policeman said when he searched his house he found the burro was washing clothes covered in blood. The police officer refused to give further testimony. There is another lawyer who wants to help Veronica. He is interested in the burro case because he has also experienced a similar case that happened to his father. Sucker thinks that he should get out of prison as soon as possible to marry Maricruz, and he changed his mind that Schofield was going to escape from prison. And Schofield took him back. A mysterious woman orders Kellerman's agent to take care of his Burroughs sister before harming them.
How'd we miss this, guys?
Schofield's father was out of the...
Schofield was shocked that the madman drew one by one his tattoos. The madman wanted to see it, and Schofield banged his head, so he thought it was the madman who hit him. Here he says that this tattoo has a way to hell. Schofield thinks he knows the tattoo for his way out of prison. Turns out he was really crazy, and he was brought back to where he came from. Now Sucker also returns to the cell. At the clinic, when he wanted to be injected with the hormone insulin, here he sprinkled the chemical drug into the sewer hole. Schofield bets the doctor if the family survives prison, then he will take the doctor to dinner, and the doctor doesn't care. Veronica came with her partner. Burroughs said he was framed. When he went home and washed his face, he was surprised there were bloody pants there. And at the same time he was ambushed by the police.
I never touched those pants.
Veronica's colleague invites to check the CCTV footage. Finally, Schofield tries to dismantle the sink. Sucker makes a noise that makes the whole cell grab. Schofield kicks the wall until it shatters and succeeds. Schofield says this is just the beginning. The scene changed. Kellerman came to his assistant's house. He said since Schofield is a threat to them, then Schofield will be moved to prison.
What's this?
That is a transfer request.
The film begins with a flashback of Schofield being tattooed. The tattoo says English fits Percy. What does it mean? The scene moves to Pope's room. Agent Kellerman comes to the prison to request the transfer of an inmate named Michael Schofield to another prison.
Done something off their hands?
These men are my he knows about.
Pope refusing the transfer because for what? Pope, on the other hand, needs Schofield's expertise in building his Taj Mahal. But here Kellerman threatens with a photo. Whose photo is that?
What's this?
Right now, just a piece of history.
Schofield, Burrow, a bruisey. Sucker, we call the Alliance Blur, holding a meeting. Schofield asks them which one will English Fitz or Percy choose. Schofield said he would prove it himself. Here the audience was confused about what the conversation meant. Schofield also told the next plan. Schofield has a visitor in his cell. And it turns out he is Pope. Pope says there's a reason other than Schofield robbing the bank. Pope tells Schofield to explain. Schofield admits Burroughs is his brother. He went to jail on purpose, because to be able to enjoy his last time with his brother. Pope says Schofield will be moved. Schofield fights, but Pope said you are fighting someone who is higher than me. Pope can't do anything, and Pope said goodbye, tomorrow you have to move. Scene shifts Veronica together with Nick's lawyer researching CCTV footage. If the Burroughs are slandered, they have to believe that the footage was fabricated. The footage shows the victim sticking out her head, as if it was set up to prove the murdered vice president's brother. Nick said no gunshots. It could be that the person who took the goods was not the Burrow, because his face was not visible. Made as if this was a robbery to a random person, but this is only a hypothesis. How do we know this is fake? Nick said I knew where to go. The bruisey knew Schofield would be moved. Schofield said it was a hoax. Focus on the original plan. Schofield continued to go to D.B. Cooper for advice, how to keep him from being transferred to another prison. D.B. Cooper said you have to apply for an intermediate decision. You can claim to have an illness, allergy, or environmental problems so you can't move, even if the application is not granted. As long as the application for detention will not be transferred, and the process can take up to 1 month. Sarah is told by a friend that it turns out that Lincoln Burroughs is Michael Schofield's older brother. Hope got a letter from Schofield. Schofield said he had sinusitis and couldn't move to a cold place. Pope also accepted the application. The bruisey carried out a mission from Schofield. He ordered his men to beat the guard. A riot occurred, and it turned out that his men were trying to copy a key. The trace was taken by a bruisey. What key plagiarism is it? Back in the cell, Now Schofield tries to simulate entering the back hallway of the cell. He washed clothes and dried them to prevent other prisoners from being seen. He entered and followed the path according to the plan on his tattoo. Schofield also managed to find a way to the rooftop. Back in the cell, Sucker is furious that Schofield took too long. Sucker says his heart feels like it's about to burst out of fear for the guards to come. On the other hand, Abruzzi and his men were making duplicates of wax molds by melting plastic cones. And Veronica come to the expert video editor. He said he couldn't find the crack the video was edited.
Whoa. You see something?
No.
But he realized something. Sound can't lie. He found that the gun reflection was fake. Veronica asked the editor to testify in court, but he asked for the original tape evidence, not a copy. Veronica and Nick also asked for the original tapes in the police file. But it turns out that the pipe in the tapes room is leaking, thus flooding the room and destroying the cassettes there, including the CCTV tapes belonging to Burrow. Was it a coincidence? Back in prison, Schofield is continuing his Taj Mahal project, and he asks Pope why he was transferred to another prison. Pope denied that it was only an equal distribution of the number of prisoners. On the one hand, Schofield said it took time for this foundation wood to dry and Schofield had to hold on to it, otherwise the model would collapse. Schofield asked permission to be in the office until it dries. Pope allowed it, and Schofield was left in his office alone. Schofield lied because the mock-up was dry.
Evening, Warden.
Pope comes home and shocked arrived Agent Kellerman. Agent Kellerman said why Schofield's transfer took so long. This is where Kellerman reveals that he knows Pope's secret, that Pope had an extramarital child who had died, and he threatened to tell his wife if he didn't get rid of Schofield's sinusitis application. Pope kicked them out, and Pope destroys Schofield's file. Schofield carries out his mission. He waits for Abruzzi to open the door from the other side to join him. Back to the cell. What does it mean? So here Schofield is tricking the guard. He thinks Schofield is still inside. Schofield returns to his cell and he escapes into the return alley. Schofield says it will take a moment and Sucker is told to stand guard. Schofield didn't tell Sucker where he was going. Unexpectedly, the guards held a countdown of prisoners.
Schofield, Sucre.
And when it was Schofield's turn to be called, he wasn't there. And Bellick also blew his whistle that there was an escaped prisoner.
Going off, Captain. I got Schofield followed through when they...
Sucker was reluctant to tell what happened. The warden guarding Schofield said that Schofield was in Pope's room, but Bellick ordered him to check. And it was true that he wasn't there. The alarm goes off and troops are deployed. Schofield escapes through the rooftop. But why did Schofield escape alone? It turns out that Schofield didn't run away. He just wanted to watch the prison defense procedures if any of his prisoners escaped, and police cars came from different routes. Schofield saw the time how fast the police arrived. So, Fitzpercy's choice of English at the beginning was the name of a street. Schofield wants to know which path he will take when he gets out of prison, and Fitz Street is the answer. No police cars are coming from there.
With you? No. And the rear door? It's still locked, so I checked. How the hell did he...
Back to prison and checked the room. After Pope checked, it turned out that Schofield was there. Schofield said he wasn't going anywhere.
I must not have seen him behind the table.
So, well, it's less 3 hours and that's over.
And the guard said it was my fault I didn't check under the table. Bellick felt he was doing something ridiculous and was angry with Schofield. But Pope defended Schofield. But here, too, Pope said to Schofield that the transfer would still happen tomorrow. Pope came to church and he told the priest about his past mistakes. He felt very sorry.
His mother made it clear you couldn't be in his life.
Veronica went home and they were surprised to see the door of the house was open. When they checked, nothing was missing, except for CCTV footage. Veronica panicked. She said no one knew where the tape was stored except for Nick. Veronica was suspicious of Nick. It's the day Schofield is transferred and it's a sad ending. Because Pope realized he made a mistake, he went to Schofield and canceled the transfer. Schofield was not moved. He immediately went home and met his wife. He would tell her secret. Kellerman reports to a mysterious woman that her mission to move Schofield has failed. And he said it wasn't just the electric chair that could kill the burro. The scene continues, showing Veronica, who is reported by the office to be getting a lot of messages from Nick. But Veronica ignores it because she thinks Nick is a bad person. Nick goes to Veronica. And here Veronica says, "Don't follow anymore." Nick says, "Do you believe I took the CCTV footage?" Veronica here can only evict Nick. Moving to the cell at night, Schofield will carry out the next mission, namely the Demon Face mission. He is seen measuring steps near the wall there. In Sucker's cell, Panic hears that there will be a check by the warden, and Sucker put the pillow into the blanket on the Schofield mattress. The warden came and asked Schofield to remove the blanket because he suspected it was not moving. Because he didn't answer, the warden decided to go in. And it turned out that Schofield was already there. Schofield says, "I already have an escape schedule. We must carry out the mission according to the time. If it has to be like this, little by little there is an inspection. When can it be finished?" Sucker has a pretty crazy idea. The mission is to make the prison lock down, where when in lockdown all inmates will be detained in their respective cells. There is no event going out to the yard, and for sure no wardens enter. Then how to make a lockdown? That is, by turning off the prison cooler. All prisoners will be hot and their emotions will increase there. It can make prison chaos. Schofield also agreed to carry out the plan. The new Dr. Sara walked up to Schofield and said, "Why didn't you tell me Burrow was your brother?" Sarah's doctor said that she could help to get her treatment schedule closer together, so they could see each other. Schofield also said thank you. Then Schofield bought an egg beater from other convicts. What is it for? Next, Teabag returns from the hospital, after being beaten up by a Brucey and his friends. When he returns to his cell, Teabag is happy because he has got a new assistant to replace the assistant who has been killed by other inmates. Schofield also took action to turn off the AC. Came to visit. Veronica was angry because she saw Nick was ahead of her. She said to Burrow, "Don't trust Nick. We don't know who he really is," but here Nick says he has proof. Nick explains that he's looking to find out who called the police to raid his Burrow's room. And after he checked, it turned out that the call was from Washington, D.C., which is thousands of kilometers away. They got evidence that the caller as a witness to Burrow's entry into the apartment was a fake, but the evidence is not comparable with CCTV evidence. Nick said, "We should go to Washington to find out more. That is if you believe in me." Seeing the inmates are stifling. On the other hand, Schofield is drawing a copy of the devil's face from his tattoo. Teabag is here protesting with the hot temperature. They were told to line up and don't make trouble. He said it was hot in here like in Africa. He said when this man woke up this morning his skin was still white. Teabag was watered because he did not want to obey to back off. And the warden said lock down. All the cell doors were closed. Then Sucker went with Schofield to go down the hall. The detainees went crazy, culminating when the Belsic officer revealed Teabag's secret. Namely that there was a man who raped his own sister who had a disability, and then a man named Teabag was born. Teabag is really angry here. The guards were calm at first, but he was starting to worry that they were going to break into the prison. And it turned out they did. Bellick requested that Wing A be close to Wing B. And it turned out that here he was making a projection of his demonic face onto the wall. Schofield turned on his spotlight. Schofield arrives at the wall and explains to Sucker that behind this lies the prison's old sewer system. If we go in there, we can go to the hospital. And if we go into the hospital, we can get out of here. Veronica and Nick were expelled because of a riot. And the warden brought the Burrow back to his cell. But on their way back to his cell, they met Teabag, who happened to be passing by. And they were about to beat up the warden, but the Burrow protected him. A fight ensued, but the Burrow was beaten until he passed out. and this warden became a prisoner. Dr. Sarah is seen in the hospital's ward in Wing B. The prison patients know when Sarah entered. The patients there went berserk and beat the warden there.
What's up, Doc?
Dr. Sarah was attacked by the inmates, but she managed to fight back and locked herself in the room. The inmates immediately wanted to break into the room there to catch Dr. Sarah. Sucker belittled Schofield, saying it would be impossible to ask the devil to help destroy the walls. What we need is a hammer, but we don't have any. Schofield said, "We don't need a hammer, we just need an egg beater." "How can we break walls with an egg beater?" Schofield said the egg beater is only used to make small holes. Hooke's law of elasticity. By punching holes in the fatal points will make the walls brittle. It turns out that the function of this devil's face is as a sign where Schofield must drill. They started drilling. The inmates threatened the warden to say the hospital is safe. Pope gets a call from the governor, who asks for the safety of his son, Dr. Sarah. Pope says her son will be fine because he's in Wing B. The governor will fire Pope if anything happens to Dr. Sarah. Teabag took the warden to the prison cell, and here to torture the warden he beat him into the Schofield room. And the warden accidentally opened the sink. Schofield's escape plan was discovered by Teabag. But here a bruisey shut Teabag's mouth. Schofield was annoyed that his plan was discovered by Teabag and the warden. Teabag negotiates that he won't divulge it as long as he goes on the run with them. And Teabag suggests that the warden be killed so that there are no witnesses. Schofield disagrees. Schofield hears that the prisoners have a doctor captive. When Schofield saw the CCTV, he quickly rushed to save Dr. Sarah through the hallway. And he ordered no one to touch the warden. Burrow is awakened by D.B. Cooper, and he asks where is Schofield. Then someone said he knew Schofield and would take him there. Who is that man? Returning to Sarah. She tries to defend herself as best she can by using the items at hand. Can he survive? The scene begins. Schofield is on the rooftop looking for an entrance to the hospital to save Dr. Sarah. And Schofield enters through the airways. Pope ordered Bellick to prepare troops to get ready. Bellick asked why not just come in. Pope had stopped the water an hour ago. They would have overheated and given up. Bellick said, "Will it work?" "Not yet, but that's the protocol." The inmates negotiate with Pope. They said they had arrested the warden. They only asked for the AC to be turned on. And they said, "We also took a female doctor hostage." Suddenly surprised because doctors thought Sarah was safe. Pope ordered Bellick to come in, but Bellick said he couldn't, because that's not the protocol. In the basement, the Burrow was strangled by the man who took him in search of Schofield, but he managed to fight back and the man passed out. Back to Schofield's cell. The hostage warden says, "Please free me. I will not tell anyone about their escape plan." But Teabag doesn't believe it and wants to kill him. The scene changes to Nick's plane and Veronica immediately leaves for Washington, D.C. to investigate the caller who reported the police to come to Burrow's apartment. Furthermore, Schofield was looking for his way in the airways. And Dr. Sarah is still begging for help, full of fear. The governor's father, Dr. Sarah, came to the prison to immediately ensure the safety of his son. Here the governor asked about the whereabouts of Dr. Sarah to Pope. These barbarian convicts, trying to burn the book and put it in so that Sarah will come out. When Sarah wants to kill it, she is grabbed, but she manages to escape, and the prince arrived to save the princess. Schofield stretched out his hand through the roof. The prisoners are trying to find out where the doctor went. Veronica and Nick arrive in Washington, and they're going to visit Nick's friend who is a detective. Moving into the house, LG Child Burrow is watching the news of the prison riots, and his mother turned it off to forget his father. Here there is a quarrel between LG and his mother and stepfather. LG was annoyed with his mother. Next, it turns out that the killer is still alive and tries to kill the burro a second time. But the burro resists, and the killer dies. Burro asks who sent you to kill me, but he's already dead. Sucker tries to continue his mission of drilling the wall. Abruzzi comes after to help Sucker, and Abruzzi is amazed by Schofield's plan. Schofield and Sarah walk on the roof looking for a way out. The barbarian convicts, trying to follow in the footsteps. Seeing Dr. Sarah, who is still traumatized, Schofield tries to comfort her.
But I am trying.
Then Sarah asked why did Schofield get here and how did he know the way. Schofield said he saw Dr. Sarah on CCTV. And I used to be Abruzzi's job cleaning ceilings, cleaning out the poisonous moss. The barbarian convicts tried to peek up, but Schofield managed to kick him. The governor will order his troops to immediately barge in. Schofield and Sarah try to get down and they look at each other. But the barbarian convicts come and Schofield drives them away. They are overpowered. Schofield is looking for a way to escape. They tried to escape through the back roads. The troops are ready. The firing squad is ready at the top. Here Bellic is trying to curry favor with the governor. And he's trying to vilify the Pope in order for Bellic to get a better rank. After a while they made a hole. They finished and tried the Schofield theory. With a few punches they managed to make a hole in the wall. Sarah and Schofield make it to the exit. But here Sarah is worried about Schofield's condition. And it turned out that Schofield was already in the firing squad. The barbarian convicts arrived, and Schofield ordered Sarah out of the way. When the Dr. Sarah came out, Schofield immediately crouched down. The shot hit the barbarian convicts in the basement of a building. Nick's friend came and said the origin of the call. And when investigated, it turned out to be from a public telephone. They also tried to investigate the surrounding environment. And strangely enough, the payphone rang. And when it was picked up, a mysterious man said not to get involved in this business. And said from now on they were going to die. Veronica and Nick go home immediately from there. Burrow comes to the cell, looking for Schofield out of concern. She goes into Schofield's cell and finds her whereabouts to Sucker. Finally, Schofield is back and they hug. Pope told Bellic he would be severely punished if he slandered in front of the governor one more time. Sarah also met her father and hugged. The governor apologized for putting his son to work in the prison hospital. In the cell, the anti-riot team came in and was here to try to kill the warden. They all forbade it. The warden was ordered to return, and Teabag was expelled. But he turned and stabbed the warden to death. This is where Schofield feels guilty. Dr. Sarah also asked the cleaning director, why did he order the inmates to clean the poison moss? And he was surprised he didn't tell the inmates to do that. And Dr. Sarah was wondering why Schofield lied. Then the scene shows Schofield, Sucker, and Abruzzi gathering in the courtyard to further discuss escape strategies. Schofield says we have to make a way to get to the hospital. And the trick is to dig a hole in the empty warehouse over there. They figure out how to get there. Teabag comes over. But Schofield and the others are reluctant to tell the plan and disband. Abruzzi and Sucker don't want Teabag to be included in the escape mission. The wife of Bob the warden, who was killed at the hands of Teabag, comes to the prison and takes Teabag's belongings. Here Pope condolences and promises to find out who the killer is. Bellic was ordered to investigate this case.
I want the son of a bitch.
Veronica and Nick are back from Washington, and Nick reassures Veronica that the call is just a normal threat. They brought their belongings to put in the house. Lucas came his neighbor to help lift the things. When they entered the house and Lucas opened the door, and tore, there was an explosion. Abruzzi had an idea and said to burn the empty warehouse so that we workers would be told to clean it up and have a chance to dig a hole there. Again, Teabag came and threatened if Teabag was not invited he would dismantle the escape mission. He also said don't tell anyone that he killed Warden Bob. If not, the secret behind the sink will be leaked. LG visited his father because he was worried about the riots. Here his father says that be patient son, the truth will be revealed. Father is not a murderer. Next, Agent Kellerman passed in front of Veronica's house. And it turned out that he was the mastermind behind the explosion, and he reported it to the mysterious woman that her mission was successful. In prison, there was a search by the guards into each cell to look for evidence of the murder of Warden Bob. Soon the workers were ordered to put an item into the empty warehouse that they were after. And when they opened the old warehouse, how surprised they were that there were actually a lot of police, and it turned out to be a place for the guards to rest. Now it has changed since the renovation. Now they are thinking how to burn the warehouse containing the prison guards. Impossible thing, but they see the DB Cooper's out of there. So he's the one who often brings coffee in there. Schofield also came to DB Cooper. He looked sad because he lost his cat due to the riots yesterday. And there he said, why didn't he just run away? With Schofield, he had no reason to run. The only reason he is still living his life is because of his beloved cat. Schofield left. Nick and Veronica are still alive. They are just injured.
Kill us.
I know. I was there.
Nick says everything will be fine. Veronica denies this. She says we should go to the police. Nick says no, because the enemy we face is bigger than the police. Nick suggests hiding as if we were dead. Sucker comes up with the idea of setting fire to the warehouse with a coffee heater. But Schofield says someone still has to go in their eye. Only DB Cooper alone. Sucker says every human must have desires. Look for DB Cooper's wishes. Remembering that DB Cooper lost his cat, Schofield immediately looked for him, and he found it. He returned the cat, and DB Cooper looks happy. But he said he wouldn't admit that he was DB Cooper, the phenomenal robber. Schofield said it's okay, he just asked for help so DB Cooper can make a warehouse fire. DB Cooper said he had 32 years of clean track record in prison, just waiting for a parole decision. He couldn't help Schofield, but he was grateful for the cat. Schofield is not pushy. Schofield comes for insulin injections. Here Schofield asks why didn't he just change hospitals because of the riots yesterday. Sarah says she hasn't thought about it and hasn't got a replacement hospital either. Then the doctor asked Sarah why Schofield lied about cleaning the poison moss roof. Schofield didn't answer and just walked away. There was an unknown woman who came to the prison to meet Burroughs. She said, you have a son named LG, right? If you accept your execution with resignation, then LG will be safe. If you continue to fight, then LG's life is in danger. Burrow was furious and the woman left. Kellerman's assistant agent came to LG to his house. He claimed to be an environmental survey officer. He came in and suddenly he pointed a gun at him. Then coincidentally his mother came and they ran. Behind the house, LG met Kellerman. LG opened his cell phone to call 911, but Kellerman said it's useless. Luckily, stepfather LG came and beat Kellerman. Unexpectedly, Kellerman shot the stepfather until dead. LG also ran away through the front of the house, but to his surprise it turned out that his mother had died too. Holding back his sadness, he fled in fear. LG ran away and Kellerman's agent called to come back. Otherwise you would be slandered as a murder suspect. Kellerman also engineered the murder of LG's father and mother so that it seemed as if LG was the culprit. Bellick comes to DB Cooper's cell to ask who killed Warden Bob. If you don't tell us, our friendship ends, he says. Bellick.
Here when it happened.
But DB Cooper refuses to tell. He says goodbye and says what a nice cat. Burrow is told that his new wife and husband are dead. Then LJ, he is a fugitive from the police because the evidence of murder points to him. Burrow asks permission to call LG, but can't because it will be suspected as an attempt to conspire with a fugitive. Burrow was annoyed. DB Cooper returned to his cell and was so shocked when he saw that his cat had died there. He was sure that this was Bellick's doing. Teabag comes to his colleague's cell and says that Bellick's examination is getting closer. Teabag pleads with his friend to admit that he is the culprit to protect himself. But he refused, even though he went back to his cell. At the warehouse, DB Cooper does his routine, which is giving coffee to the wardens. He wants to avenge his cat. He opens the Bellick locker and he starts burning the cigarette. Burrow tells Schofield to get out of here fast. LG is in danger. And the Burrow also has a gap there. He also plans to run away by force, but the action is thwarted by Schofield. Schofield is reluctant to plan to fall apart just because of a rash burrow. On the other hand, it turns out that the warehouse is on fire. Schofield thanks D.B. Cooper. But D.B. Cooper doesn't do it for Schofield. The fire was successfully extinguished, and they found the Bellick cigarette was the source of the fire. But suddenly T-Bag's men came and confessed that he knew who the real killer of Warden Bob was, and the guards immediately went to Bag's friend's cell and found a photo of Bob's son there. He was immediately dragged away. T-Bag's slander plan was successful. It looks like Nick and Sarah are in a secluded house belonging to Nick's father as a hiding place. They would hide while working out their next plan. When the workers want to do their work tidying up the results of the fire, T-Bag was also here trying to provoke him by saying he would dismantle his mission, and finally, like it or not, T-Bag was invited to become a worker. They were told to clean up all the mess in the warehouse like new. Back, and they were provided with tools and equipment there. When the guards left them, the digging began. Scene changes. LG is hiding because he is a fugitive, and he is looking at his cell phone. So when he met Kellerman earlier, he didn't call 911, but he took a photo of Agent Kellerman as evidence of his murder. Smart too. The scene changes this time. Kellerman's agent meets a mysterious woman in person, and the woman also said that immediately catch the runaway Burrow child. And this is mind-blowing. Do you know who this woman really is? He is Vice President of the United States of America. The scene begins with Schofield, who is taking a bath when T-Bag's subordinates ask for help because he can't fit in one cell with a pedophile, T-Bag. T-Bag came over. The boy left, and T-Bag said, "Don't meddle in my business." Schofield left and the boy asked for help again, but Schofield ignored him. At the office, Burrow asks Pope to be let out of prison to find LJ. Burrow says in case of a family emergency, prison inmates can come out under supervision. Pope said clearly it couldn't, because your son is a double murder suspect. In the warehouse, the workers act as if they are working. When there is no warden there, they start digging again. And there is a problem, namely how to dispose of excavated stones. They throw it little by little in the yard. Franklin suspected this. Then the prisoner's car came and the new inmates came out. Introduce him. He is a young boy who has just felt the ferocity of prison. We call him the new child. When Schofield walks into the prison room, he saw T-Bag's men who committed suicide. Suddenly Schofield was shocked. At church, Schofield said he felt guilty for allowing the child to be stressed, pressured and abused by T-Bag. On the outskirts of the city, you can see LJ, who is shabby and walks aimlessly like a tramp. At the safe house, Veronica accidentally sees Nick's gun, and Veronica's suspicions come back. Nick says it's only his father's. Here Nick says, "If you don't believe me, you can go." But Veronica persisted. The new child tries to be friendly with other inmates, but he is shunned instead. Abruzzi is throwing out the excavated stone when suddenly Bellick asks, "What are you doing?" Abruzzi also came to see what's wrong. Bellick said the monthly money hadn't come in yet. So all this time Abruzzi was able to get the power of authority to be the coordinator of the workers, thanks to him bribing the Bellicks every month. Bellick said, "If this afternoon the money hasn't come in, then get ready, you won't be working anymore." Scene in the warehouse. The Burrow is full of emotions, digging. He wants to run away because he is worried about LJ. Suddenly a warden rushed in and ordered them all out. What's wrong? It turned out that the warden even went inside and there was already Pope's secretary waiting. It turned out that they were both desperate for internal fertilization, and they do it on the table where the dug hole is. They went out and the lecherous act was discovered by Schofield and his friends. When they were inspected, the table almost fell into the hole. Abruzzi has a visitor who says that Abruzzi's company is now bankrupt, so he can't send money to Bellick's account anymore. Abruzzi's men also have guests, and he is a Philly person who is looking for Fibonacci. Now Philly is not siding with Abruzzi because of his slow work. Dr. Sarah is seen investigating Schofield's track record of health, and finds that Schofield has visited a psychiatrist. Abruzzi came to his men and threatened him, but his men were not afraid. Abruzzi no longer has the power. It is proven that his men are no longer defending Abruzzi. Seen here is a new child who is looking for attention, and for his actions he was beaten. Here Teabag tries to help him and gets acquainted with him. "This is quite a new prey," said Teabag in his heart. Burrow, who was in his cell. The warden came to feed him and he held his hand there. He begged to be allowed to call his son. Burrow wooed what if it happened to his son. Even the warden melted here. LJ, who was walking without knowing the direction, suddenly got a call from his father. Here Burrow told LJ to call Veronica and Nick. But suddenly LJ was caught by Kellerman's agent and he was chased. Then, LJ hid under the car and he managed to escape. This new kid is getting bullied. Teabag here steals the attention of the new kid and here Teabag abuses. He leaves from there and Teabag follows. Schofield, who knows, trying to stop Teabag from bothering the kid. Sarah came to the psychiatrist where Schofield was treated. He said that Schofield had latent inhibitory disease. If his IQ is low, he will be crazy. But if his IQ is high, then he will be a creative genius. Michael is very sensitive to his surroundings, the selfish type, someone else than himself. Schofield saw Teabag singing, teasing the new kid. And the new kid burst into tears of fright. Schofield refuses to make the mistake of allowing it a second time. LJ was running all night. And Veronica called to come see him at Lake Mercer. Here, Kellerman's agent intercepts the conversation and finds out that Veronica is still alive. They immediately went to Lake Mercer. LJ also bought a ticket to go to Lake Mercer by bus. Abruzzi, annoyed with his subordinates who betrayed him, pierced his eyes with shards of glass until he screamed in pain. Agent Kellerman followed the GPS on LJ's cell phone. And he got into the bus LJ was riding. And it turned out that only LJ's cell phone was there. LJ took another bus and arrived at New Glarus. How come? So Veronica messaged LJ to throw away his cell phone and go to New Glarus. They hugged and Veronica calmed LJ's heart. In his prison cell, Burrow gets a message from a man claiming to be his lawyer. It turned out that it was not an ordinary message. The message would be read, meaning if read the last word of each line. The message says, "This is my LJ with Veronica. I'm fine. I love you, Dad." Burrow was happy and calm again. In the Teabag warehouse, Michael was hit on the leg using an iron. He says, "Don't bother the new kid again, else you will suffer the consequences." Teabag agreed to it forcefully. Here comes the Bellic, who almost stepped on the hole, but he didn't fall. It turned out that the hole had been closed with a board by Sucker. Abruzzi is called by Bellic and Bellic says the money hasn't come in either. "You're running out of time, Abruzzi." The scene changes on the page. The new kid tries to mock the Teabag, but Teabag ignores it because it has agreed with Schofield. Suddenly several prisoners came. There were former Abruzzi's subordinates wearing worker uniforms.
What they doing?
And they were going to enter the warehouse right then and there. Would the hole be discovered? But before we flash back to the Schofield being tattooed, the tattoo is an image consisting of an arrangement of playing numbers. What does that mean? Back to prison, scene workers who are cleaning up the results of the fire. They have not realized there is a hole there.
It's just an envelope. You've been doing business with me face to face.
Abruzzi pleaded with Bellic to reinstate his position. But Bellic said there was no money, he couldn't. But he had to have the money first before he would reinstate his position. Since Abruzzi is bankrupt, he can't even do anything. Abruzzi also came to Schofield to immediately inform the whereabouts of Fibonacci so that Philly Falzone gave him money to restore his position. In church, Burrow said, "Was Fibonacci worth killing?" Schofield said no. He is an innocent person. He only witnessed the murders committed by Abruzzi, so that he is only a living witness who can throw Falzone into prison. Agent Kellerman was called by the vice president to wait in an apartment because another agent was coming, and this agent comes. Introduces him, he is Agent Quinn. He said disappointed to Kellerman and his partner that Veronica, Nick, and LJ were still alive. But Kellerman hid it from the vice president. Starting today, Agent Kellerman and his partner are relieved of their duties. Quinn said this didn't come from me and didn't come from the president, but came from the company. What does it mean? Please wait. It's a long story.
You're putting that carpet in the guard's room?
In the yard, Sucker asks the workers when to change the carpet. They said maybe tomorrow or even tonight. Sooner or later the hole will be discovered. Schofield tried to rack his brain to come up with a plan. Next, the warden gave the Burrows the food as well as the last food request paper. But the Burrows refused and returned it. The warden put it through the bottom slit hoping he would change his mind. Franklin negotiated with Abruzzi's men to be put into labor by paying $150, and he was accepted. He also investigated his suspicions all this time, and it was true he found a hole dug by Schofield and the others. Next, Schofield said if I wanted to mention the whereabouts of the Philly Falzone, I'd be the one to tell Falzone directly. Abruzzi agrees. Abruzzi calls Falzone to tell Schofield will tell him straight away. And Falzone was happy to hear the news. Finally, Abruzzi did a good act, said Falzone. Falzone will also come that afternoon. It looks like Schofield is calling a woman. So the meaning of the playing card tattoo is a woman's phone number. And Schofield said, "Do you remember when I said Fibonacci?" That woman understood and carried out her mission. What mission is that?
Yes.
At the hospital, Schofield said, "Whose flower is that to Sarah?" Sarah says it's her birthday. And the flowers are from her father. She is a little happy even though she doesn't like flowers because they can only be enjoyed for a few moments.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Veronica is concerned about LJ, who sees now he is a person who does not have, and in the next few weeks he will be a child without a father. Vic also tried to cheer him up to keep his spirits up. Philly Falzone came to the prison, and without further ado he asked Schofield, "How did you know about Fibonacci's whereabouts?" Schofield explains, Fibonacci guarded by the regional police chief. In the Fibonacci region there are only 4 regional police chiefs. Schofield tried to call one by one to the police house. If the policeman is at his house, then he is not on duty. And it was the police chief Pronzo who, when he called, he was on vacation and was not at home. Pronzo has children and a wife. He will definitely write letters. Schofield came to Pronzo's house and took the letters that were there, and there was a letter from Pronzo who was out of town, and there was an address. That's how Schofield knew the existence of Fibonacci. Schofield asks for $200,000 for his secret.
A long way from Chicago.
But Abruzzi is here trying to bully Schofield into giving him a photo of Veronica, and threatens if he doesn't mention he'll be in danger. Schofield also informed that Fibonacci is in Canada, Ontario, and gave his full address, and begging them, if you want to kill, do it quickly. Finally, they got the Fibonacci location. Abruzzi won praise and will be given a monthly stipend for Bellick to return to his post. His ex-girlfriend Veronica is visited by Quinn's agent, who says that Veronica was the victim of an explosion, but she survived but disappeared. The ex panics, and Quinn's agent asks him for help in tracking Veronica. Burrow, who changed his mind, asked for his last meal, blueberry pancakes. In the evening, Veronica gets an email message from her ex asking where she is, but Veronica refuses to tell her whereabouts. It turns out that Agent Quinn is the one who sent the email, and Veronica's ex-boyfriend was murdered by Agent Quinn. Through his sophisticated tools, Agent Quinn has managed to track down Veronica's whereabouts. Phil Falzone with his partner came to the address given by Schofield to kill Fibonacci. And seen Fibonacci was at home with his family. He was going out of the house looking for wind when the mafia wanted to enter Fibonacci's house. To their surprise, it turned out that the police were waiting to hide there and immediately raided them there. Turns out Fibonacci out of his house. It's a different location. He reads the paper that says Kansas, not Canada. Schofield lied to Falzone. It's just a trap. Schofield comes back for the injections, because Schofield knows Sarah doesn't like flowers that wilt easily. Schofield also made origami flowers and put them there. Sarah smiled to herself like in love. Abruzzi got word that Falzone was arrested in Canada on international gun charges. Abruzzi emotion came and approached Schofield, but it turns out that Abruzzi is actually satisfied. The two of them are actually conspiring to trick the Falzone. They just act to make the Fall Zone believe. Fall Zone had also sent money to Bellick before he was arrested. Abruzzi's men are back scared to see Abruzzi, and Abruzzi get his power back. Franklin comes to Schofield giving pebbles. Franklin says, "I know your secret. I'm not done, just wait." Schofield and the boys got their job, back to clearing the warehouse. But here Franklin comes and asks to join by threatening to reveal the secret while stepping on the hole. And they accepted it.
Hey, boss. Sign him up.
You got it.
Vero and Nick go into town to visit Stedman's wife, the vice president's brother, and claim to be from the Violence Victims' Rights Association. They asked what was Burroughs' motive for killing her husband. He answered many motives that people would do. If you look around, they're the ones who own the stake in Stedman's company, and they'd be happy if Stedman was dead. $500 million flowing in as a result. Veronica and Nick analyzed where the $500 million went, and haven't found it yet. Suddenly there is a news saying that the Vice President of America will run for President of America, and he has the largest campaign finance in history. Did the campaign money come from the money of Stedman's death? And the terrible thing is that Agent Quinn has arrived at Veronica's hideout and continues. The scene begins with Schofield imagining a flashback of buying a luxurious platinum ring. Who is the ring for? Dr. examines Schofield, and here Schofield mentions that Dr. Sara kept the flowers. Sara, who was embarrassed to admit it, said that "I don't like throwing things around." Here Schofield is told to take a breath and let it out, but Dr. Sara is just blown away. Agent Quinn looks like he's sanding his own face. What's he going to do? The workers were doing their job of digging holes. And suddenly the warden came and said that Schofield had a visitor, namely his wife. So all this time Schofield had a wife. Schofield's wife was checked before visiting the prison. Bellick said as if he had seen the woman somewhere, but he forgot. And this is Schofield's wife. "How beautiful are you with Dr. Sara?" Schofield also said, "You still wear the ring."
Every day.
Here his wife has a credit card that Schofield asked for. Why use a credit card in prison? It will be answered later. Dr. Sara, who was passing by, happened to see Schofield hugging his wife. Looks like he's jealous. Schofield returns and his teammates ask about his wife, which they never tell them. Schofield says, "You'll understand later." In the prison cell, Schofield unpacks the contents of the credit card, and it turns out that it's not actually a credit card. It was the access card that Schofield had prepared. Schofield went down the hall behind the prison cell to the storage area. He used the access card to open his room and went to where his belongings were stored. Schofield went to the sewers and picked out what to get. Schofield also prepared items from the beginning, namely a black shirt, black pants, black shoes, a voice recorder, and a watch. What's that for? But when he looks for his watch there, it's gone. Next, Agent Quinn knocks on Nick's house and pretends to be the victim of an accident. Nick lets in, and suddenly he's shot right in the back. They all became captives and kept in their respective rooms. Agent Quinn also interrogated them. He asked them who else knew about the secret to the Burrough murder case, and none of them answered. B. Cooper introduces his new cellmate to Schofield, namely David. David was arrested in prison because he was caught pickpocketing. This new kid told Schofield he wanted to join the work team because it was nice to see they were paid, even though it was only 19 cents per hour. Schofield asked B. Cooper if he had heard of anything being stolen from the safe by the warden. DB said it was normal. And DB said there was a warden who was most famous for taking prisoners' personal belongings. And it turned out to be true when checked by the warden using Schofield's watch. Nick is held captive in the warehouse, interrogated by Quinn, seeing that there was a log there. He tried to hit the Agent Quinn, but he failed because his arm muscles were torn, making him unable to move his arm. Schofield comes to David asking for help stealing a watch from a warden, in exchange for David being able to work on a team of workers, but Schofield didn't promise he would work on it. The little boy agreed. D.B. Cooper was called into Pope's office. Pope said that the son of D.B. Cooper has cancer and was sentenced to die in a few weeks. Hope can't allow DB Cooper to see him because the condition for inmates to get out is if a family member dies. And DB Cooper is sad.
They think you're still a flight risk.
She's my only child.
At the hospital, someone was seen screaming, convulsing, and vomiting. It turned out to be David, but he only acts to be able to take the watch from the warden's hand. It's also cool to distract from this pickpocket. Veronica tries to run away, but she doesn't succeed. Agent Quinn came. He was going to torture Veronica, but Veronica managed to untie the rope and beat her with a chair. Veronica immediately saved LJ and Nick. He ordered LJ to immediately prepare his car. But Quinn's agent tried to shoot LJ. LJ ran and was chased into the forest. DB Cooper came to Schofield to give the watch from David because he heard his son was sick cancer and he had to see her. Finally, he decided to join the escape team. Now he admits that he is DB Cooper, a legendary robber. But Schofield did not believe it. If you forget that in episode 1 DB Cooper evaded that he was a legendary robber, Schofield tests DB Cooper's sincerity by having to prove that he's the real DB Cooper the mugger. The chase took place. Veronica went into the forest to look for LJ, but he was found by Agent Quinn. Veronica tries to lure her into the well. But Agent Quinn isn't stupid. He realizes there's a well there. But LJ comes and pushes Agent Quinn into the well. They manage to escape. Schofield assembled the voice recorder with his watch. What for? In the yard, Schofield, who was working on cleaning the yard, trying to dig the tool. Bellick investigates who Schofield's wife is. In fact, he gets information that Schofield married him the day before the robbery. Bellick, who is curious about the woman's identity, tries to come to a nightclub, and yes, he found it there, and interrogating the woman. She finally confessed that she was not Schofield's wife. She only married because she was given an expensive ring. And he admitted that he came to prison because he was ordered to bring a credit card. Agent Quinn immediately asked Kellerman for help to pick him up. Kellerman arrives at Agent Quinn's location.
He'll die.
But instead of helping, he closed it and left it there. At church, DB Cooper tries to prove it to Schofield. He said the robbery money was an early imprint of a bank. United States serial number DI 192,589. But Schofield said it was just a story that didn't prove anything. And suddenly DB Cooper gave him a book with money in it, with the same serial number. And yes, he is the real DB Cooper. Schofield took the tape. And here comes the doctor Sarah straight away saying that Schofield is married. Sarah said there are many questions about you. From now on, as long as it has to do with medical like injections and others, that's fine. But beyond that, there shouldn't be any relationship between us. Schofield replied, "It's time for me to answer all your questions." Schofield turned the device on. So it's a voice recorder that lets us know how long the warden is on patrol, and there's 18 minutes of free time we can use to escape. In the barn, they managed to dig down to the pipe. Schofield told Burroughs he only had 18 minutes to cross the ropes. While we are too many, will not be enough time, so one person must be sacrificed. Who is he? Furthermore, Schofield, who was in the sewer, he was seen taking out his black uniform there. He threw the uniform and went downstairs. Now Schofield was in a place with a railing above it. Schofield also took out the rope inside the uniform and put the uniform into the plastic and closed a hole there. T-Bag was on the phone and asked how the little boy was there. Turns out he was calling Jimmy. Schofield said he had to skip work so he could do it faster, and they also discussed about one person having to come out of there later. Franklin heard that. Franklin said that to the rest of the team, and they were discussing who should leave. And here T-Bag comes and realizes that they will all betray him. But here Teabag threatens if they run away without me. I've got people out there to dismantle the plan. The workers come out of the warehouse. Franklin looks like he wants to instigate Sucker, where he realizes that he and Sucker are actually useless in this team. Sucker denies that he has been credited with doing many things. Franklin said, "How much do you know about this escape plan?" Sucker said, "Don't know what. Maybe Schofield will betray you, Sucker." Franklin said, "How about we just run away first?" Sucker also considered it. David demands Schofield's promise to be included in the work team, but it turns out that Schofield does not keep his promise. See that Nick, who was injured, was shot by Agent Quinn and is taken to the hospital. But here he forbids taking him because if the doctors see the bullet, he will be in trouble with the police. Veronica was forced to take the bullet with her hand. Bellick, who already knows the identity of his wife. This was heard by Dr. Sarah and Schofield explaining it when he was seeking treatment. But Dr. Sarah was reluctant to listen to it. Teabag to try to instigate D.B. Cooper not to join the escape mission. However, D.B. Cooper is against it. Abruzzi says to Burrow, "We'll kidnap his brother Teabag for a few days until the mission is successful, which will leak his plans if we betray." And Abruzzi's orders came to his brother Teabag. Abruzzi's messenger called that there was an accident. Instead of kidnapping, he accidentally shot Teabag's brother and his young nephew. Abruzzi also regretted it. At the hospital, the doctor said that Nick had to be hospitalized. And to his surprise, LJ wasn't there. Kellerman calls his assistant to carry out his mission to come to the funeral. Sucker has a visitor, and it turns out that it is Maricruz, who has not seen her for a long time. Here Maricruz said that she was pregnant, and the father of the baby to be is Sucker. Sucker was also happy about this, but Maricruz said he was going to marry another man because he couldn't take care of the baby alone. Sucker is sad and says, "Promise to wait for me." But Maricruz is confused and doesn't know what to do. He walked away. It turns out that LJ disappeared to come to the funeral, and that funeral was LJ's mother's funeral. Kellerman's assistant will follow suit.
The kid's here.
In Schofield's cell will go down the hall for 10 minutes. Sucker, who began to doubt Schofield, asked to come, but Schofield did not allow it. A small argument ensued, but in the end Sucker was willing to give in. Abruzzi's men asked him where would he be holding the Teabag tomorrow. Abruzzi said it was up to you. So here Abruzzi plans to do some calculations with the Teabag so that you don't take part in the action of the escape mission. Feeling guilty about the murder of his nephew Teabag, Abruzzi has nightmares. At the hospital, LJ returns, and Assistant Agent Kellerman follows him, so now he knows the whereabouts of the three people. Pope is here with the sad news of the death of his nephew and brother Teabag. Hearing this, Teabag felt very sad. The pastor came to Abruzzi's prison cell to give advice that God is merciful, and here Abruzzi was enlightened. Sucker reveals little secrets about Schofield's mission. The warden who stole Schofield's watch said he lost his watch when David had a seizure in the clinic. Bellick asks, "Whose watch did you steal earlier?" He replies that it's Schofield's watch. Schofield is seen turning a water faucet in the yard and waiting for it, until after a while the water in the empty sewers fills up, and Schofield turned to turn off the faucet. Teabag is kidnapped by Abruzzi and his partner. Sucker asks, "When exactly are we going out?" Schofield refused to tell. He says, "Why do you want to be responsible for information which will harm you?" Schofield asks Sucker to guard the cell while he's away, but Sucker ignored him. Bellick knows David stole the watch, inviting him to his room to want to reveal his secret in return given burgers. David accepted it. Kellerman's assistant, full of doubts and guilt, invites his wife to flee abroad and forget about her mission.
I think we need to make a change. Well, maybe we should give it a shot. It's not too late.
Schofield went to the sewer and took off his clothes and entered the room that had become a pool. He took the rope and climbed onto the iron bars, and it turned out to be connected to the storage room. Schofield pulled the rope and the water receded. There he saw the hole that had been made by him, and it turned out that the hole was directly connected to the hospital. Veronica gets a call that Kellerman's assistant will reveal her secret all along and wants to meet in person about it.
On Kennedy to the exoneration of Lincoln Burrows.
What is it?
I can't tell you. On Kennedy.
But Brucey threatens T-Bag not to join the escape mission. T-Bag was forced to promise not to join the mission. But when Abruzzi turned around, T-Bag took out a razor from his mouth and slit Abruzzi's mouth sadistically. In the warehouse, the guard came suddenly. The workers were not ready for it. Burrow tried to buy time, and finally he was forced to beat the warden. Schofield comes in from the sewers and says, "We're running away tonight." But his friend said it couldn't be, because we have a very big problem here. Pope said Burrow would be executed in 36 hours. As a reward, he goes berserk. He will be put in solitary confinement until he is executed. Schofield was annoyed that he couldn't escape if his brother was in isolation. Sucker calls the hospital to find out how Abruzzi is, but he didn't get any info. The escape team gathers to discuss his escape plan. Schofield said, "We wouldn't run away without my brother." All of them, who can't wait to escape, threaten Schofield that they will escape without Schofield. Schofield was annoyed and said he would not let that happen. Franklin went on the phone and covered the phone with a cloth, only to find that he was calling his son. His son says, "How is the camel?" When his dad coming home, Franklin also told his wife he was eating dates and was riding in the truck. So all this time Franklin hid that he was going to prison to his wife and children. Franklin told them he was in Iraq on an assignment. Franklin calls to give news that he won't be home in a year, just a few more days. His wife was happy. The phone is transferred to his sister-in-law, who finds out Franklin is in prison and asks to prepare a car to escape tonight. In his prison cell, Schofield returns to use his tattoos as part of his plan, but this time he cut his own skin and took something there. And it turned out to be a pill. What pill is that? Furthermore, Schofield, who had given up hope, was in solitary confinement, asked the priest to come to his cell to pray together. And here Schofield entrusted a necklace to the priest, who will visit the solitary confinement of the Burrow after this. At the hospital, Schofield thanks Dr. Sara for all this time, and Dr. Sara thinks, "Why, you're such a farewell person." Schofield says, "You didn't know today could be your last." The escape plan begins. Schofield decides to run away. The 5 workers seem to be preparing to go to the warehouse. T-Bag asks, "Why did you change your mind so fast? Would you run away without your brother?" Schofield said, "My brother would come tonight despite being in solitary confinement." Veronica came to Fox River Prison, where live television coverage was going on. Veronica took advantage of this by speaking out and explaining the Burrow case, that the Burrow was just being framed, and the action was witnessed directly by the vice president.
The Terrence Stedman wasn't even in the car that night.
Burrow came to the priest, and he came with a necklace from Schofield.
Michael.
Not Schofield, his name, if there's no meaning behind it. When Burrow checked it, there was a pill there, and it said eat at 8.10. Veronica also asked to come in to see Burrow to his isolation room. They hug, and Veronica says, "We still have a chance. Someone will reveal the secret of this case. I'll be seeing him in a few hours." Veronica said, "You don't have to run away, you can get out the legal way." Burrow asked the warden what time it was, and it was already 8:10. Burrow trusts his sister more and chooses the free path through escape, and ate the medicine. Soon he felt nauseous and he was poisoned. The guards took him to the hospital. Kellerman's assistant is getting ready to move overseas, and he lets his wife out for a while to meet Veronica. Agent Kellerman came to his assistant's house and found his wife there, who was in a hurry to leave, and she said she was going on vacation. Agent Kellerman was suspicious because his house was clean like someone would move house. Kellerman also asked the whereabouts of his assistant.
For the Bahamas, aren't you?
You know women.
At the warehouse, Schofield says we'll be leaving at exactly 9 p.m. from the warehouse. His partner says, how will we escape from here? Meanwhile, the work period of the workers is only until 5 p.m. and we will be returned to our cells. Schofield says we have to sort it out. Schofield also hit the water pipe there. The warehouse was soaking wet. Agent Bellick came and saw this. They were ordered to work overtime, tidying it up until the warehouse was dry again. They did it.
Man.
Veronica also came according to the appointment at the place and time that had been told on the phone. The assistant came Kellerman, who had betrayed. He made a surprising statement. He revealed to Veronica that it turns out that Stedman, the brother of the vice president who was murdered by Burroughs, is not dead, he is still alive. The proof is in the envelope he brought. Before they finished talking, suddenly Kellerman's agent came there and Veronica was told to hide. Kellerman's agent came and asked his assistant to explain his betrayal and handed over the gun. Accidentally, the secret envelope fell, and when Kellerman reads it, turns out that all the secrets of the Burroughs case are there. And Kellerman's name is there as one of the masterminds behind this case. This annoyed Kellerman, and he was forced to kill his own comrades. Franklin's brother-in-law came to the prison to prepare a car to escape by pretending to break down in front of the prison, but the action was checked by the guards, and they were told to leave. They failed too. The escape action begins. The team fled into the sewers and arrived at the storage room to go upstairs to the hospital.
Cletus, don't you worry.
But all of their plans that were drawn up for 12 episodes had to be lost because of one thing. Pipes that have been perforated by corrosive substances are replaced by wardens with steel pipes. They tried to forcibly dismantle it, but they couldn't. Schofield was desperate. Teabag also threatened him with a knife if he didn't take it out now. However, if they want to be threatened, their way out is already closed. Burrow also tried to break down from above, but the Dr. Sara came. He had to pretend he had vomited there. When he saw the burrow that would not stay still, the warden also handcuffed the burrow. The warden who heard the noise came to the room and entered there. The team fled and hid. Luckily, the warden came out and the escape team decided to back off and go back to the warehouse. The warden is back and they have escaped. Bellick, who was about to return home, just remembered the workers who were still in the warehouse and tried to check how far their work progress had been. The team fled one by one out of the hole. But the DB co-opper caught his leg and could not climb up. And Bellick came. He opened the door and asked why your work is taking so long. He also told the four of them to disperse and go back to the cell. When Bellick came out, he just realized why only 4 people, even though this afternoon there were 5 people there. He also returned to the warehouse and, luckily, DB Cooper is back. Bellick left. Schofield is nervous because in 16 hours the burrow will be executed. There is only one person who can stop this execution, namely Dr. Sara. Schofield asked Dr. Sara to speak to Burrow. The doctor tried to persuade the warden, but he couldn't. Schofield pleads with Dr. Sara to persuade his governor father to seek clemency. Schofield says Burrow is innocent. He asks Sara to come to Burrow's lawyer. Veronica, what happened? Sara Munn considered it. Next, his colleague, a judge, to hear the latest evidence. He was invited for 15 minutes this afternoon to come to court. On the DB Cooper page, it said that there was once a case where someone was about to be executed. But during the execution, the electricity went out, and the execution process was postponed to 3 weeks later. On hearing this, Schofield went down the hall and looked for a mouse and caught it. Dr. Sara came to the Burroughs cell to make sure the Burroughs' physical condition was ready for execution. Burrow told Dr. Sara a plea. When I die, please take care of my sister. Dr. Sara can only stare. David eats with Bellick and tells everything that happened in the prison. Now he is Bellick's spy. But because David didn't have any info about Saucefold, he was expelled. But David here just remembered that he overheard D.B. Cooper and Schofield talking about the failed electric chair story. Hearing this, Bellick asked the officers to make sure the electric chair was back, and it was true that the electric chair didn't turn on.
Son of a bitch.
Sucker says, "What is our next plan?" I don't know. Schofield can only think about tonight's execution. At the impromptu trial, Veronica presented evidence that Burrow was innocent. But the evidence is not strong. Vero has a witness. But the witness is missing and the witness has died. Vero has physical evidence that the recording has been damaged. On the other hand, the lawyer for the victim's side also has stronger arguments. They lost the debate and the judge said the appeal was rejected. Bellick checked into the electrical room and it turned out that there was a rat that was the cause. Then Bellick said to the technician requesting that the electric shock be regulated, so that the vice president's brother murderer feel the pain longer. This Bellick is really vile. Schofield is summoned by Bellick to have a final visit to see his brother before his execution. Schofield also came to see the Burrow for his final visit. Burrow asked Schofield not to discuss his escape plan again. Burrow said he had given up. He now just wants to enjoy his last moments. The prison lights suddenly dimmed, indicating that they had repaired the electric chair. LJ is angry that he wants to meet his father in prison, but that can't be because LJ is still a fugitive. Not long ago, someone knocked on the apartment and it turned out to be Dr. Sara. Veronica comes to jail and says she lost in court. Schofield is getting desperate now that Sara believes Burrow is innocent, and she goes to her father to persuade her to consider the evidence. The governor too will read it and consider it. Pope came to the Burrows' cell and said the execution was about to begin. Burrows was herded into the execution room. But suddenly the warden said there was a call for Pope from the governor. The governor also said something and everyone there was anxious about the decision. And it turns out, Burrows' execution will continue. The clemency proposed by Dr. Sara is not accepted.
You did your country and your party a great service.
They were all disappointed and said goodbye one last time. And the execution begins. The execution of the Burrow begins. It will be executed exactly at 12:00. The head of the Burrow is wetted with water so that the electricity can flow properly. Schofield and Veronica saw the execution in front of her. But suddenly Burrow said something. He saw a mysterious man. Burrow said it was him, turned around Schofield, and the execution begins. Schofield is confused as to what happened and what Burrow said. In the waiting room, Veronica and Schofield are sad. And Pope comes to offer his condolences. But suddenly the Burrows came out of there and were still alive. Pope said the judge called and said to postpone his execution because he had new evidence. Schofield asks how long has it been delayed. Pope couldn't figure it out. When everyone was out, Burrows said Dad was there. Schofield said it was impossible, because there was only me, Vero, and the reporter. Burrows said you wouldn't recognize his face. Schofield denies even though he has left us for 30 years. But Schofield sure recognized his father's face. The question is, why did he return at the last moment?
That's not possible, Link. It is possible. I saw him.
The vice president was very upset that his execution did not take place. Kellerman explains that an unknown person has provided new information, and that person is neither Nick nor Veronica. Kellerman said there could be a leak from our company. The judge explained why he canceled the execution. An unknown person sent this letter in front of my office. You can see the Stedman medical history of the shooting victim. At the autopsy, he had a normal appendix. However, This contradicts his history when at the age of 12 he had appendicitis surgery. The judge said we'd be exhuming the body again to see if it was Stedman's. In the cell, Schofield says he's not going to stand still. We're going back to work, formulating a new strategy. Schofield looks at the tattoo on his back in the mirror, looking for a new path.
At the execution, there was a man in the viewing room.
Burroughs asked Pope who was in the execution room. There was only Schofield, Veronica. 3 reporters, 2 women and 1 man. The man's name was William Prawl. But Burroughs didn't know the name because it wasn't his father's name. It seemed that this time the prison was in winter, and snow was on all corners of the courtyard. The escape team gathered to discuss the mission to escape from prison Part 2. Schofield said this time we will enter the hospital through the psychiatric ward, but the sewer road from the warehouse to the psychiatric ward is only halfway, and the rest we have to walk on the ground, and this is the main problem.
We can go into that hole in the guard's room.
Oh, hell no. We come up out of that ground there. That tower there?
In a prison cell, Sucker sees a guy who likes to deliver laundry clothes, and he has an idea. It looks like Nick. Veronica and Stedman's lawyer came to the funeral and took Stedman's body there. Sucker came to the laundry man. Let me introduce you, he is Sanchez, cousin of Sucker. Sucker asks Sanchez something, but Sanchez hesitates for fear of being found out. He will think about it again. Burroughs dreamed that when he was a child he was invited by his father to watch the baseball game of his father's favorite team and realized it was called Prawl, just like the reporter's name that Pope said earlier. Sanchez finally did a Sucker wish. He gave her a dress. What is it? Sanchez asked. That tomorrow must be returned again. Back to warehouse, the workers do their activities back. Bellick comes to the warehouse. Teabag gives the code, but accidentally. Franklin made a hole in the wall whose contents were the results of the excavation they had hidden. He closed it with his shoes, but Bellick ordered to work. Franklin couldn't leave his feet because the excavation would leak, but D.B. Cooper helped him. They survived and the Bellicks returned. When D.B. Cooper removed his leg, the wall was broken. They immediately put him in the hole. At the same time, another warden came in, but Teabag managed to stop him and they almost got caught. In the prison cell, Schofield tells Sucker that the sewers in the psychiatric ward are complex, so it's easy to get lost. Schofield stepped into the sewers and into the yard. And he put on his shirt, and that dress is the warden's uniform. The lights were on, but Schofield casually just waved his hand. He was admitted to a psychiatric ward and allowed to use the toilet there. He went in and looked for a way. He found it. When will again he was caught by the guard, but Schofield dodged because he was lost. He escaped. In the autopsy room, the doctor said that the corpse's teeth matched Stedman's. They said it was impossible.
If you like, you can bring it.
They come out and there's a vice president there who says, "Are you satisfied with what you've been doing?" They ignored it. Schofield finally returns to his cell. But on the way he accidentally meets a warden there. Schofield goes into hiding, and accidentally his back touched the heat pipe. When he arrived at the cell, he saw that he had severe burns. His uniform was sticking to his skin. Sucker also forcibly pulled the uniform. Schofield was admitted to the hospital and he had a minor operation. Sucker is summoned to Pope's room, and thought Sucker was the one who hurt Schofield, but Sucker denies that, saying Schofield has been sweating from the moment he entered the cell. Dr. Sara also asked the same thing, but Schofield refused to answer. Sucker returned her uniform. And immediately the warden came to ask for his uniform. He was angry because his uniform had holes in it, and Sanchez reasoned that his uniform took too long to lift the iron. Kellerman and his colleagues tried to look at the CCTV room in the judge's office. They wanted to find out who had sent Stedman's medical history, and it turned out to be his dad, Burrow. Dr. Sara told her colleague that she found a cloth that came from her prison uniform while operating on Schofield's back.
What about it? Well, this fabric doesn't come from...
Schofield goes back to the cell and he takes off the bandages. And there's a problem there. He lost his tattoo, which was the floor plan of the prison ward complex. The scene shows that the burrow seemed to be outside his side. Then Schofield came and handed over the key, which had fallen on the road. Schofield doesn't like his brother's reckless habits. Burrow went into his apartment and found that there was Crab Simons and he was collecting his debt. Outside the window, someone was taking pictures and taking notes of the clothes Burrow was wearing. Burrow's ordered to kill someone. In return, his debt of $90,000 will be considered paid off. Burrow was also given a paper containing the name of the assassination target, and it was the vice president's brother. Schofield meets with Veronica at the bar, and Veronica asks her how her ex-boyfriend Burrows is doing. Veronica, who is half drunk, breaks into Schofield's apartment and seduces Schofield. They almost missed it. Suddenly the phone rang and it was from the Burrow. Schofield ignored the call. Burrow, on the other hand, is confused whether he should kill or not. Calls Schofield to ask for help because he is in a state of debt. Schofield, who knows Veronica's ex-brother,
Something real bad. I can't get out of it.
refuses to continue and tells Veronica to go home, since it was Schofield who didn't answer. The Burrow would unanimously do its job. Was forced to approach the target, and it turned out that the target had been killed from the start. In the CCTV room, Agent Kellerman was seen waiting for the record. Burrows runs and he accidentally bumps into Sucker. Sucker here just fell in love with Maricruz. They are not yet dating, and it looks like there is Sanchez, the prison laundromat, there. Together with his new lover, Maricruz in the future. Turns out he's a guy who likes to steal his friends' girlfriends. The scene changes. Dr. Sara is still working at the hospital outside the prison. It was seen that he was nervous and he went to the medicine room to get morphine, and he injected it. It turns out that Dr. Sara used to be a drug user. The scene changes to Kuwait. This is where Franklin comes from. It turns out that Franklin is a former military force in Kuwait. He was given a new task, namely the task of guarding prisoners. Veronica came to Schofield, who was in his office. He informs that Burrow is a suspect in a murder case. Schofield went to jail and Burrow said he didn't commit the murder. He was framed. Schofield says, "I am disappointed in my brother. You are such a mess. When mom dies and we get insurance, I used half of it to be able to go to college until I graduated and became an architect like now. But look at yourself, you use half of it again for some reason." Burrow says it's not what you see. At the office, Schofield spoke his brother's frustration with Veronica, saying why did he borrow Crab Simon's $90,000? Definitely for the merry-go-round, drunkenness, and drugs. Veronica reveals the truth that has been hidden for so long. He said the $90,000 was for you, Schofield, to cover all your college expenses. When your mother died, she didn't actually get the insurance. Burrow engineered you to accept the $90,000. Schofield was surprised to hear that, and it turned out that Burrow
You're telling me he is where he is because of me?
Was an older brother who cared about him. Schofield apologized for everything that happened, and he apologized for the incident that night of deliberately not picking up the phone. Schofield says, "Now I believe in you that you don't kill." But I'm confused about the explanation of the CCTV camera. Sucker is instigated by his friend to invite Maricruz to
Pulling the trigger.
dinner. A penniless Schofield tries to rob a shop and he only robs Franklin, who is now on duty at the prison.
Actually,
Sees the guards who are torturing the prisoners. Dr. Sarah, who was still dating, was seen being under the influence of drugs. Unsuitable spouse vows. Obviously, suddenly there was an accident there. Dr. Sarah approached, but Dr. Sarah couldn't do anything because she was still under the influence of drugs. Franklin reported his disapproval of the persecution of civilians, and Franklin was sent home dishonorably by his superiors because he was not in line with the treatment of the military. The defendant burrowed in court and he was found guilty by the judge. Franklin arrives in America and talks to his sister-in-law to ask for a job. He was offered to be a truck driver transporting illegal goods. He accepted it. Schofield visits the borough where he is being held temporarily and is told that he will be transferred to a prison called Fox River. Schofield smiled and had an idea. Schofield comes to his office and takes the Fox River
Origami crane sitting next to my bed.
building file. Sucker told his friends he was going to propose to Maricruz. And this partner said you had to buy an expensive ring for her. Schofield also commits another robbery when he for money. And when he was about to leave, the police were waiting for him outside. And it turned out that he was framed by his own best friend. The vice president talked to Kellerman about a luxury residence. Dr. Sarah is gathering with her colleagues and tells that she has now managed to hold back from taking drugs again. It turns out that there is a Bellic here. He goes to
I felt pretty damn happy.
Dr. Sarah to offer himself a job in prison because they are in need of a doctor. Strategy formulation begins with Schofield collecting
You heard of Fox River?
The prison.
Yeah, I know.
data related to the Fox River. Franklin, who is now a driver of an illegal truck, had to surrender because his actions were caught by the police. T-Bag went to his girlfriend's house. He was full of laughter playing with his children, but accidentally his girlfriend saw the news of a fugitive on TV who committed molestation and murder of children, and T-Bag's face was there. Schofield tries to memorize the positions of the prison plans, but he had trouble. A woman delivering food arrives, takes her food order, and looks at her body covered with tattoos. Schofield was inspired to copy all his plans in the form of tattoos. His girlfriend T-Bag came to prison and expressed his disappointment all this time. T-Bag said, "Actually, I was the one who should feel betrayed. I have repented today and tried not to commit sexual immorality again when I met you. But what you did made my evil side come back again. Remember, one day I will be released from prison, and I will never forget how your front staircase looks like." The scene moves to a big house in a quiet place.
By the grace of your love, I was a new man, a better man.
The vice president is seen preparing a drink. Then he gives the drink, and it turned out that the man was his older brother.
It's almost over.
Stedman. Yes, he is still alive. How can this episode be more exciting? We guarantee the starting with Schofield, who is continuing to repair Pope's Taj Mahal. There seems to be good progress. The mock-up will soon be finished. Schofield returns to the cell and sees Dr. Sarah, who wants to talk to Pope. Sarah said she found pieces of the warden's uniform on Schofield's back wound. Pope was shocked in Schofield's cell, trying to recall his lost tattoo. Because without it we can't get through the pipeline in the psychiatric ward on our escape. At the warehouse, the warden came and said that the workers were now done. They were told to pack up, and the warden said tomorrow the carpet would be replaced with a new one. They also have time left to close the hole. Schofield plans to make thin cement to temporarily seal the hole. They were forced to get out even though they still left a hole there. At Bellic's office, David is confronted by a large homosexual convict named Avocado. Bellick tried to dig him up about Schofield, but until now he doesn't have any information. He reasoned because they are workers, so I find it difficult to approach him. Bellick also had an idea. In the warehouse, the prisoners are trying to patch the hole. But Bellick comes and says it looks like you guys need more power. David also joined the warehouse. With David, they couldn't do anything. Franklin had the idea of telling David to clean his brush outside. David was forced to leave. The scene changes. Kellerman's agent asks Samantha's agent who this man is. He used to be the same as us company members. Now he's a former company. And Samantha says he's Burroughs' dad. Agent Samantha knows more about this information than Agent Kellerman. Agent Kellerman was told not to ask too many questions. At the barn, the warden came and said, Schofield, you were called Pope, and the others had to leave right now because the work was done. The hole hasn't been patched yet. Schofield said he'd fix it himself tonight. In the apartment, LJ is angry. Wants revenge for his mother's death. But Veronica says we have to wait patiently. This enemy of ours is something great and impermissible. We have to wait until there is a gap to be able to reverse the situation. Nick accidentally remembered that we had left Quinn at the well. They came to the well and got Quinn's body there, and there's the device they're looking for. Quinn's cell phone over there. LJ is ordered to go downstairs and pick it up. He accidentally found the inscription Kellerman O. Kravke, what does that mean? Schofield was called into Pope's room to confess who the warden burned your back. Pope said, I have proof of this cloth. If Schofield refuses to reveal the culprit, he will be taken to solitary confinement. He also refused to tell, and he was put in solitary confinement. Burrow, who is in isolation, also communicates via pipe to Schofield. And Schofield tells the problem this time. Franklin called his wife and said that he had not been able to keep his promise to go home at this time, but Franklin said he'd be home in maybe a few days. The escape team gets together and says Schofield is in isolation now, and they say we have to keep the hole closed at night. And the only person who can do it is only Sucker because he has access through the back of the sink in his cell. But Sucker refused. He said, if I close the hole in the warehouse, then how do I get back into the cell? They also thought of a way, in solitary confinement. It appears that a stressed Schofield is trying to remember the plans on his missing tattoo, and suddenly he had an idea. He took off his jacket and tore it off. What for? In the cell. Sucker sees that there are prisoners who are stressed and become transvestites. Sucker has an idea and asks Teabag something. Teabag was forced to do it. Teabag was successful and gave the item to Sucker. What item is it? At Nick's house, LJ accidentally found a gun there and took it secretly. Dr. Sarah comes to the bar with her doctor friend. Dr. Sarah confides to her colleague that she is attracted to Schofield. But she can't because Schofield is still a prisoner. Back in solitary confinement. It turns out that Schofield used a torn off his jacket to create the missing plan, but he still couldn't remember. A frustrated Schofield tries to hit the wall and injure himself. In the cell, Sucker performs his action to close the hole. He accidentally kicks the bucket, and the warden came in to check, but luckily Sucker managed to hide outside. When the warden had left, Sucker ran to return to the cell, but he was caught by the guards. He was taken to the Bellick room. Bellick interrogated why he had run away. Sucker says that he has no intention of running away. Sucker says that in the afternoon he doesn't go back to his cell, he waits until dark to take something from someone. Bellick says, what is it? Sucker refuses to answer and he is searched, and it turns out that Bellick has found women's panties. Sucker says that he misses his girlfriend. Bellick makes this right. Bellick also kissed the panties. But still Sucker must enter the isolation room. Sucker asks, where is Schofield? He is next to you, says Burrow, but Schofield doesn't answer. Burrow called the guard to check Schofield's condition, and the guard was surprised to see Schofield and immediately called the medical team. Nick and Veronica leave LJ to buy Agent Quinn's cell phone charger. LJ secretly searches for info about Kellerman O'Cravey and he finds out that Kellerman lives there.
Now, really think you're gonna get to 4 buttons?
Back in the solitary confinement, Dr. Sarah finds Schofield's hands that are already bleeding and the walls are covered with blood. Looks like he can only stare without the slightest expression. He seems to have been very depressed with all the pressure. In the yard, the team fled to see the car that was going to install the carpet had arrived and discuss whether Sucker managed to close the hole or not. The conversation was heard vaguely by David. David was called by the Bellic. David said Schofield and his friends were hiding something. I don't know exactly what it was, but they were all talking about the carpet in the warehouse. Bellic immediately went to the warehouse and opened the carpet. And he found nothing there. The Sucker mission has been successful. Pope came to Schofield's solitary confinement to see how you were there and what a dire condition. LJ goes alone without Veronica and Nick knowing. He visited Kellerman's house. He tried to barge in and take a look at the condition of the house. Soon Agent Kellerman arrives and LJ tries to point his gun and shot him in the neck until he bled. But soon the police arrived and LJ had to give up. Schofield, who has now been sentenced to insane, was transferred to a psychiatric ward. Bellic, who found nothing in the warehouse, was annoyed with David and transferred David's cell to Avocados. LJ is arrested by the police and Agent Kellerman is interrogated by the police. The police ask what is your job. He replied that only the seller of processed buffalo meat. Back in the psychiatric ward, it turns out that Schofield isn't crazy. He's just pretending to be able to meet the crazy man, his cellmate first. So his mission this time is to ask a crazy man to remember his missing tattoo image. When Schofield tried to get him to talk, the crazy man even said, "Who are you?" He doesn't remember Schofield at all. Schofield tries to remind the crazy man that he was his former cellmate. The madman remembers Schofield stealing his toothpaste, but doesn't remember anything else.
You drew it. Hey, where do I...
The nurse came to give him the medicine. The madman voraciously drank the medicine. When Schofield is ordered to take his medicine, he refuses to eat it. The nurse called her colleague. The scene moves to the cell. Schofield's cell is seen, which is now not available because Sucker is still in the isolation room. The warden jury said to Bellic he would auction the cell. A convict came into Schofield's cell and made a $200 bid to Warden Gary. Gary agreed, but he complained about his toilet leaking. Gary said it would be fixed within 24 hours.
Got a deal? Deal. Now get your ass out of here and I'll...
Teabag heard of it and bid on it, but Gary said it was sold out. The sister's companion forced Schofield to take the medicine, and Schofield ate it. When the sisters had left, Schofield took the medicine out of his mouth.
Or it's going in the rear door.
Then Schofield went up to the madman and talked back about the toothpaste. When asked, the madman relapses after eating the medicine. Teabag reports that we're in big trouble, that Schofield's cell will be occupied by someone else. They've agreed to move into Schofield's cell. Franklin also offered to Gary that he would pay him $500 for Schofield's cell. But Gary said, "I want cash, not just bullshit." Franklin said, "Just wait." Back on the psychiatric ward, Schofield takes the Gilo to the bathroom. And Schofield says, "There's something in your tooth." And Schofield pokes his mouth until the madman throws up and takes out the medicine. In solitary confinement, Burrow gets news that his son LJ is now being held in prison. Burrow calls him, but LJ stubbornly wants to avenge his mother. He doesn't feel guilty at all.
It's an emergency.
Burrow told Veronica he really wanted to meet LJ and advise him in person.
I just wanted to take one of them down. He'll always win.
On the way, Agent Kellerman was stopped in the middle of the road by Samantha because he had become a victim and a witness to his son Burrow. Kellerman was relieved of duty and now he will no longer be Past Pampers vice president.
You are now a witness in his criminal investigation.
Back in the psychiatric ward, the madman told Schofield it was away, and Schofield confirmed it. Looks like the madman has started to regain his memory. Franklin returned to his crew to order to collect his debts from other convicts. But they refused because now Franklin had sided with whites like Teabag and Schofield. Franklin did not accept it. He beat his friend, and he was welcomed by black gangs. It looks like the madman is eating drugs, but he goes to the back and vomits it up. The madman said, Schofield was right, it was the drug that made him stupid. Then the madman said it was the road to hell. I remember the road.
No, it's not. It's just the...
Franklin, who had just been beaten, said he had to find another way to make money. Teabag proposes to just gamble. Franklin says he's not good at playing cards, but Teabag will help him cheat the game. But the problem is they have to find the first capital. D.B. Cooper comes to Schofield's cell and takes his book there. He remembers that he once gave the money to Schofield. Then he gave it to Teabag as initial capital for gambling.
Open on 40. Make it quick. Hey, get the hell out of here. Sorry, boss.
Schofield also gave him paper and pen. He took off his shirt and ordered the madman to draw his missing tattoo.
What was there before?
Accidentally, Sanchez passed. Schofield said please pass on to his friends a message that is, I'm fine. I'm filling in the blanks. Schofield returns to the room, and Sanchez sees the wound on Schofield's back, which is the same as the hole in the warden's uniform that he borrowed. Sanchez leaves. At the electronics store, Nick accidentally meets his colleague. His partner threatens to keep an eye on Veronica and warns Nick who you work for, so it turns out that all this time there was a certain purpose. Nick always helped Veronica. What will Nick do? In the psychiatric ward, Schofield sees the crazy dreaming again and invites him to vomit the medicine. But when he has taken, the madman threatens Schofield, and now he is completely healthy. The madman knew that his tattoo was his plan to escape from prison. If Schofield doesn't tell him his secret to escape, he's going to tear the paper. And Schofield explained it and promised that the madman would run away with him. Schofield was given the paper. Veronica returns home. Then she asks if you bought the charger. Then Veronica asked why you didn't charge it. And the cell phone is on. We succeeded. There are still 322 contacts, said Veronica. The back room of the prison, the guards gathered to gamble there. And Franklin was already playing in there. The opponent took out a triple queen and was already PD with his victory. But Franklin didn't want to lose. He took out his full house card. He won the round.
You tell me.
Full house.
A full?
The next round starts with the Franklin card. It seems that the strike has been arranged. There is only one card left. But unfortunately, he accidentally turned the card over, and that is not allowed in the game rules. Teabag was forced to shake it back, and the cards are not good. His opponent bet all his money, but Franklin replied to his challenge, and he told him to just borrow money. His annoyed opponent finally gave up. Franklin got the money.
82.
And I raised you 74, but this ain't it. You want to borrow some money? Fair. Better vote Democrat. You know.
Pope came to Burroughs' cell. He said his boss allowed you to visit your son for an hour. It was a very strange and impossible thing. You have a great lawyer, Burrough. The madman tried to escape but was electrocuted. Franklin, who already got the money, immediately gave the $500 to Gary so that he immediately had Schofield's cell rights. But Gary raised it to $700. Franklin also asked for D.B. Cooper's watch, but Gary said someone had already paid $700 for it. Gary went and took the money. Schofield, who already got the picture, went back to acting healthy and told Dr. Sara about it. Dr. Sara says you can get out of here if you are healthy, but you will still be in isolation if you don't admit who hurt her back.
And the doctors here do say that you've been acting fine. The problem is that if you don't tell the Pope who burned you, he's going to lock you back up in ADSEC.
Sanchez came into the isolation room and gave Schofield his message, and Sucker replies, "Please tell me that I've closed the hole." Burrow calls Sanchez into his cell and says something. Sanchez came to the escape team who were eating and said that now he was invited by the Burrow to run away. They were all upset but having no choice. They listened to Sanchez's plan. Sanchez is seen ironing a clothes.
Help get the fish out of sight.
You got another solution to our situation?
And giving the clothes to the DB Cooper, who enters the warehouse, which has now become the room of the return guards.
You ready to get out of this aquarium, fish?
Pope comes to the psychiatric ward to confirm Schofield's health and asks who did it. Pope gives assurance to Schofield, and Schofield said he was Jerry who tortured me.
I thought you threw me in there.
A name.
Gary.
And he also often took money from the inmates. In the pantry, the guards were surprised to see Pope, and Pope immediately searched his belongings in Gary's locker and saw the inmates' belongings were there. And Pope saw a uniform with burnt sleeves. Gary was fired on the same day.
This is a real...
Gary says, "You're just like me, Bellick." Bellick whispered, "The difference is I'm not caught." The Burrow was seen being dispatched to visit his son. Nick is keeping an eye on Veronica now and reporting on what's going on. Good news now that Schofield is back in his cell and returned DB Cooper's watch.
Wanted me to give you this.
On the way to the Burrow, and the prisoner's car was hit hard by a truck and continued. The scene begins with Burrow, who was on his way to visit his son, and suddenly he was hit by a truck. Burrow lay down and passed out when he realized not long after that someone came, and he was Agent Kellerman, who had planned the accident. Seeing the Burrow that was still alive, he tried to kill it. But it turned out that a car was coming and wanted to help, and seen a man in a hat there. Kellerman had to delay the action, and suddenly the man hit Kellerman's agent until he passed out. Back in the Sucker prison, now released from the isolation room, the escape team discusses their next escape plan. Schofield says, "We're going to escape through the infirmary at the hospital, which means we still have one problem. We must have the key to the room." Schofield said he would think about it.
There's only one piece left to this whole thing. The key to that room.
There was a convict bus coming, and to their surprise, there was an Abruzzi with his new hairdo. In the dining room, Schofield comes to Abruzzi. Now it appears that Abruzzi has become a religious person. He's changed now. Dan invites Schofield to pray. Teabag, on the other hand, plans to kill Abruzzi. At the office, Bellick reported that there was an accident with the car the Burrow was traveling in. 2 guards died, 1 critically, and now the Burrow is missing. Pope said, "Find the Burrow as soon as possible." The man in the hat took the Burrow to the garage and pulled it out of the car. At the apartment, Nick and Veronica saw the call history of Agent Quinn's cell phone. And there were so many incoming and outgoing calls there. Nick said, "It's impossible to find the data we want." Veronica is a little wondering why you've been acting weird lately. Agent Nick also denied it. At the hospital, Schofield stood at the door and tried to lock it, so he would know which key was used to open it. At the crime scene, Bellick is investigating the case, and he met Agent Kellerman, who claimed to be a victim. And Agent Kellerman said goodbye because he was in a hurry.
Where you come from?
At the hospital, Schofield notices the key that Dr. Sara brought is in his pocket. And Schofield suddenly pushes Dr. Sara's mouth. But Schofield, who couldn't bear it, didn't take the key, and the historic moment had to be dismissed by the father who entered the room. Dr. Sara left. In David's cell, go into his cell and there's avocado in there, and David is forced to serve avocado. In David's yard there was stress. Schofield asked David to ask for pickpocketing back, but David said, if you want me to do it, you have to kill the avocado first. David told Schofield he went to jail just for collecting baseball cards. Burrow seemed to have come to his senses and realized that the one who saved him was his own father. Here the father said that he had worked for them, an organization called the company. Burrow asked, why you left us for 30 years? He said, because I was trapped in the company. This is not just any organization, those who determine the decisions in this country. The laws of the law. Appointed judges, even war, even though they rule. The problem is that if you want to move up in the company, you have to give up all your life. That's why I left you. Today I left the company and took their secrets. And look what happened, you were slandered as a murder suspect. It was all arranged to lure me out. Schofield calls his fake wife to do something back. And Schofield comes up with a plan. In the cell, Abruzzi came to Teabag's cell, and he gave a little bit of his lecture. And finally Abruzzi asked Teabag to reconcile and forgive each other. Teabag was forced to forgive him. They made peace. Bellick reports to Pope that it has been 2.5 hours the burrow hasn't been found either. Pope again orders him to look for it, otherwise our job is at stake. Avocado, who couldn't stand it, wanted to invite David to channel his lecherous act. David said, we would do it on your bed. But David immediately took a razor blade and cut the avocado's cock. Dr. Sara, who was about to go home, was met by Schofield's fake wife, Nika, who invited him to a bar to talk. He said Schofield was a good man. He married me just to help me get out of slavery.
And not to keep me for him. Oh, no, it's not at all. If you can just tell me what it is. Keep an eye on him.
But Nika was in a hurry to leave and dropped her bag there. He immediately left the bar. Burrow is angry with his father that you are the mastermind behind all this mess. His father says, I know, but here I want to try to fix all this. Someone saw his car, Burrow and his father, at the used car stand. Teabag, who still doesn't believe in Abruzzi, wants to kill him with a knife but is prevented by Franklin. Franklin says he is our key to escape from here. And Teabag relents. Nika came to see Schofield. He also made small talk and gave the key to Dr. Sara. So the meeting at the bar was Nika's mission to retrieve the key to the medical room. The police got word of the burrow's whereabouts, and the conversation was intercepted by Agent Kellerman. Burrow and his father, who knew the police had arrived, immediately fled. And Agent Kellerman was also seen there. Kellerman finally caught the burrow and pointed a gun, forced the burrow to surrender himself. Kellerman failed to kill the burrow. In Schofield's cell, duplicating the key. At the hospital, Dr. Sara is confused about finding her key there, and she realizes that the key has been taken by Nika. Dr. Sara looks at the visit list and sees Nika visiting Schofield. Abruzzi asked again for information about Fibonacci. He said to Schofield that now he will not kill him. Abruzzi, who has repented, just wants to say sorry all this time.
good story. But the answer is no.
Abruzzi also went to a public telephone and called someone there, and it turned out to be Nick. Abruzzi seemed to pretend to have repented. Dan ordered Nick to take Veronica to the Goose Park runway and wait there. It turns out that Nick has been Abruzzi's subordinate all this time. What will Abruzzi and Nick do? Schofield feels sorry for David. Because he is often used by Avocado, he will invite him to escape from prison and tell him his escape plan. Schofield is back for treatment. And Sarah's face looks uneasy. Sarah's doctor assistant says that the key is next to your locker. And he said you called a handyman to change the handle. And Dr. Sarah still wants to replace the doorknob, knowing Schofield's plan. Schofield's mission fell apart. Burrow finally arrives, back to the prison, and Pope thinks that the truck that hit him was the man Burrow sent.
Makes me think different. I want him under 24-hour surveillance.
David tries to tell Bellick about Schofield and his friend's secret. He says they will run away.
They're escaping.
And Bellick immediately went to the warehouse and tried to destroy the floor there, and it was true, he found the way out. Bellick finally found the hole that Schofield and his friends had dug all this time to escape. But immediately D.B. Cooper came and beat Bellick. A fight ensued and D.B. Cooper won. Bellick also fainted there. But D.B. Cooper's stomach was stuck by broken glass and he was injured. Team Schofield is discussing an escape plan and plans to escape in 3 days.
You think you'll have the extra suits by then?
But D.B. Cooper comes and says we have to run away right now. He tells that Bellick knows the hole.
He just did.
And now he is being held in the hole. D.B. Cooper says we're on the run tonight, because the guards will be suspicious when Bellick disappears. Sooner or later they will realize. Schofield says we're escaping 7 p.m. via my cell tonight. It's with a heavy heart that the escape team agrees to the plan.
We go. Night? Pretty weird.
Sucker said your sister is under full surveillance 24 hours, and Sucker said, if he can't get out of isolation we will still come out right. Schofield just nodded.
He's under 24-hour surveillance.
Veronica got information that there was a house for $2 million bought by her company, and the house was in Blackfoot, Montana. Veronica also decided to go there, in the sewer. Bellick woke up and he was having a hard time getting himself out. Meanwhile, in the cafeteria, the guards asked where Bellick was, who had not been seen since morning. Schofield orders Franklin, get as much peroxide as possible. Teabag asks one of the inmates for uneaten vegetable, and he put in his pocket what the vegetables were for. Schofield tells David that we are leaving tonight. Sarah's doctor comes into her room and Schofield is waiting for her there. Schofield over there explained everything. Schofield admits he stole the keys. Dr. Sarah accuses Schofield. Was it just so you could steal the drugs? Schofield denies it and he tells the truth that tonight he and his brother will run away. Dr. Sarah is shocked and refuses to help. But Schofield reminds Veronica of the Burroughs case that Veronica had told. Schofield just asked Sarah's doctor not to lock the door when she got home. Dr. Sarah said, was your love just a charade all this time? Schofield said it was fake at first, but now I really feel it.
No offense to your father, but the people who are framing Lincoln.
Dr. Sarah left. Abruzzi called his men to get his plane ready for the evening and got the car ready behind the old factory. Then Abruzzi called Nick and ordered Nick to take Veronica to the airstrip tonight. Even Nick objected.
Tonight? Was I not enunciating?
No, it's just...
It looks like the workers are cleaning the garden. David doesn't seem to want to run away and prefers to side with Bellick. He also asked the whereabouts of the other guards and said, I saw the Bellick this morning, but now he is missing.
Man, like you wouldn't hit that. I don't know, Vegas, 2 a.m. maybe, but...
In the warehouse, Bellick, who heard a warden above him, he tried to shout for help, but his voice was not heard. Abruzzi, who was lifting the plant fertilizer, He pocketed a few handfuls. What for? Franklin reports to Schofield that T-Bag wants to kill Abruzzi with a knife. Schofield was ordered to be more careful with them both, and Franklin gave the knife. Dr. Sarah looks lost in thought, and she allows her colleague to come out first.
Where are you going?
In the locker room, DB is changing his wound bandage. Then Schofield announces that David is going on an escape mission, because Schofield owed him. The escape team was angry with him, but they had to accept the fact that David was already on an escape mission.
I owe him. I don't owe you a damn thing.
And Schofield ordered the escape team to collect the workers' blue clothes and bring them to your respective prison cells.
Got too many people.
When the plan changed, so did the
When the team fled to return, the guard held him and said why in the locker room there were drops of blood. Whose blood is that? Schofield quickly cuts his hand with the knife Franklin gave him and says he was accidentally injured while transporting the goods. They escaped. Schofield asks how is DB Cooper doing, and DB Cooper said I'm fine. Dr. Sarah, who was upset, tried to call her friend, but she saw that there was a bar there, so she decided to go there to relieve fatigue, even for a moment. At Pope's office, Schofield removed a piece of wood there, and Pope came over praising Schofield's work, and Pope said you can ask for something. Schofield also asked to be able to visit the burrows, which was allowed. Schofield was trying to find a way out in solitary confinement, but Burroughs said you'd better go without me.
Told you everything we knew about Dad was a lie and you barely blinked. Listen to me.
Franklin tried to wrap the peroxide in a plastic bag and tuck it under his pants, but his black colleague noticed his action and Franklin beat him up.
Sergeant Franklin.
Dr. Sarah, who is upset, is now buying a drink. But he saw on the TV news that his father, who is a governor, would be running for vice president. Sarah suddenly stopped drinking and left the bar to meet her father. Bellick's partner started to get restless with the presence of Bellick. In the prison cell, T-Bag takes out vegetables which he puts in his pocket and smears them on his own mattress. The same thing Abruzzi did. In his own bed, he sprinkled with plant fertilizer that he had bagged. DB Cooper is seen rubbing a stone against the prison cell wall. The warden came to David and said that Avocado would be back from the hospital tonight, and asked, didn't you see the Bellick this morning? But now David changed his mind. He was well on his way to running off with Schofield's plans, because Avocado will go back to his jail cell and tell the warden that I saw that Bellick yesterday morning. Not this morning.
Yo, what's that?
Avocado's gear? It's getting out.
The guard left. Schofield orders Sucker to wash clothes working with peroxide. At the office, Pope was so happy his Taj Mahal was finished and he was about to lift it into the car. But unfortunately, the Taj Mahal was destroyed. Pope immediately ordered the warden to call Schofield, and Schofield was summoned to his room. Bellick, who didn't give up, tried to slide the rope against the iron that was there. Sarah's doctor came to her father, who was celebrating to become a vice presidential candidate. Sarah actually came to ask if you saw the Burroughs case file I gave her, and her father said no. Sarah says you're just trying to take advantage of this Burrough case to get elected as a vice presidential nominee. Sarah was disappointed with her father.
Or they become...
Did you look at the information?
I didn't need to.
They promised you the vice presidency before or after you signed his death warrant.
The guards are questioning the whereabouts of Bellick again, and they're going to report it to Pope.
What? Something about the way he said it.
Veronica, who was getting ready to go to Montana, was stopped by Nick, and to her surprise, Nick threatened Veronica with a gun so she wouldn't go there. But Nick still doubts what he did.
Time you were one of them? Who's pulling your leg?
At the office, Pope, who had heard the news that Bellick had disappeared, immediately called his wife Bellick to ask her whereabouts. But his wife said he did come to the office early in the morning, but he hasn't come home yet. Pope also ordered the guards to look for the Bellick. In the cell, the prisoners seemed to be imagining why they had run away. Sucker fantasizes about his lover Maricruz.
I'm pregnant, Fernando. I'm gonna have your son. And all I know is...
Abruzzi fantasizes about killing Fibonacci. T-Bag fantasizes about going to his betrayal ex-girlfriend. Franklin dreams of meeting his wife and child as soon as possible. David fantasizes that he will be free from the snare of Avocado. DB Cooper dreams of meeting his son, who is sick with cancer, while returning to change the bandage for his wound, which is getting worse. Burroughs imagined that he would be free from the death penalty. Back at the office, Pope complains of his Taj Mahal collapsing. But Schofield bluntly grabs the support. Pope was surprised by what Schofield did. Then all of a sudden Schofield pulled out a knife. He said that my brother Burrough and I had to escape from prison tonight. To be continued. The scene shows Schofield threatening Pope, and heard the warden who reported that the car Bellick was in the parking lot. Schofield orders Pope to tell him that Bellick's been on leave and he's fine, and so did Pope.
I spoke with Bellick. He's walked into town. He's taking some personal time.
Is he all right?
Then Schofield tied up Pope and ordered to tell the warden to have the Burrough removed and hospitalized tonight, and Schofield covered Pope's mouth and put him in the cupboard, and he beat Pope until he passed out. Schofield picked up his phone there and left it on. Schofield comes out and tells his assistant Pope not to disturb him because he has an important call. Schofield also returns to the cell. The clock shows 18:55, which means we will leave in 5 minutes. D.B. Cooper is seen changing his bandage. Now his wound is getting worse. Looks like the black man has a grudge against Franklin and wants to kill him. David is washing his worker's uniform using peroxide. So the function of the peroxide is to fade the blue color, so the clothes appear to be white. Back to Schofield's cell. Sucker looks panicked and agitated. He forgot to open the sink, and here it is, showing at 19:00 the time the inmates are free to roam in the cell area. The escape team gathered in front of Schofield's cell and collected his white uniform. The black gang was in action to kill Franklin. They came to Schofield's cell. Schofield was trying to quickly open the sink. But the black man suddenly arrived in front of his cell.
That's real touching and all, you sticking up for a brother.
And he forced his way in. But the black man didn't find Franklin there. He was ashamed and left. It turned out that Franklin had managed to get behind the sink. Nick told Veronica the truth that he worked as a Brucey's errand boy to save his father. But Nick said, I wasn't acting when I tried to solve the Burrough case. Nick also got a call and took Veronica away. The team fled one by one into the hole behind the sink. You can see Dr. Sarah, who is confused about whether to help Schofield or not. Bellick tried to break free, but his efforts were still unsuccessful. Schofield says we have to hurry. We are 10 minutes late. They walked in the sewers. And suddenly they heard the sound of Bellick screaming there. The warden heard his screams, and he tried to check the warehouse. But luckily Teabag managed to silence the Bellick and the warden. They were not caught either. The warden left. Dr. Sarah was determined to go to the prison hospital. The team escapes, moving the Bellick and tying it back even stronger. The escape team also saluted the Bellick, and Schofield took his Bellick uniform. The team runs off wearing the white clothes. Schofield goes to a place and tries to enter a pin there. Seeing D.B. Cooper's injuries are getting worse. Dr. Sarah, who was about to enter her room, saw a Burrough there. She was even more upset, and when she entered her room, she saw a morphine there and remembered her past. The assistant wonders why Pope is taking so long to call. When the team escape is ready to go upstairs, suddenly the alarm went off. But Schofield came back and said, I was the one who set the alarm. What for? Turns out it was a fire alarm in the psychiatric ward to lure the prisoners out there. When the prisoners returned, the team fled in their white uniforms disguised and entered. But the action was caught by the guard. But Schofield managed to anesthetize him.
Put him out right, like a light.
At Goose Park Airport, a plane took off, and it turned out to be a Brucey's crew. They are the ones who will pick up the escape team.
Don't worry about it.
Nick also kidnaps Veronica and covers her head. But instead of bringing Veronica to where a Brucey ordered, Nick instead took him to the airport to fly to Blackfoot, Montana. Nick immediately went to meet his father.
I'm
sorry.
My apartment.
When they arrived at the bunker to be able to penetrate into the hospital, Schofield said to David, "I know you reported to Bellick." Schofield said, "When we got out of jail, we're not related anymore. You can't come with us." Dr. Sara finally didn't lock the door and was caught by her colleague and saw Dr. Sara very panicked there. Sarah's doctor leaves and Schofield makes it to the hospital. Burrow is guarded by a guard there. And suddenly the team escapes to ambush him, and the warden did not put up a fight, then opened the Burrow's handcuffs. Teabag chased him until he passed out. Teabag saw a handcuff, and he had an idea. Back at the office, the assistant who was curious about Pop took a long time to call him, trying to figure out the contents of the conversation. However, it was just the sound from the television. His assistant also tried to check into Pope's room. Nick arrives at his father's apartment and there are the rest of the Abruzzi's men. He asks where is Veronica. If you don't take him within 2 minutes, he will shoot his father. Nick couldn't answer.
No. Just give me a chance. You just gotta listen to me.
And his father was shot to death, and followed by Nick. Nick died to save Veronica. It looks like someone is watching his movements. The team runs away. Who is he? Schofield tried to open the door, and thankfully the door wasn't locked. Dr. Sara was crying in the car because she had done this. In the office, the assistant checked Pope's room and couldn't find him there. The team fled immediately, rushed to open the window, and Schofield immediately took the water hose and they tied it to the windows and the elevator. When the elevator closed, it opened again because no one was there. David bravely got into the elevator and pulled it down. In the Pope's room, he called the warden to help find Pope and said, "I didn't see Pope out of the room earlier." At the hospital, in the Pope's room, he called the warden to help find Pope and said, "I didn't see Pope out of the room earlier." At the hospital, the madman suddenly appeared. Apparently he followed them from the start to the psychiatric ward, and the madman threatened that if he was not invited, he would report it to the warden. Burrow was compelled to say he was on this escape mission. Burrow went first and got to the other side, and covered the wires with his white garment. The crossing was continued by Abruzzi. Abruzzi got to the other side. At the office, the warden reported to the other guards, but still they did not see Pope. D.B. Cooper looks very weak with injuries that are getting worse, and he said he wouldn't run away. D.B. Cooper asked Schofield to come to his cancer daughter to give his greetings from D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper finally revealed the secret. The stolen treasure had been buried somewhere under the silo on the KK2 Utah farm, and it was $5 million.
Buried under a silo at the Double K Ranch, just out the ranch, just out.
And that conversation was overheard by Franklin, Teabag, Sanchez, and David. Schofield also promised to fulfill his request. Sucker, David, Teabag, and the madman had made it across. And now it was Schofield's turn. The guards came to Pope's office again and said try to call Pope's cell phone, and heard a phone call from behind the cupboard, and finally they found Pope there. Pope ordered to immediately set off the alarm. The alarm went off, and they had to hurry to escape because he was stuck.
No.
Down the alarm.
Pedals to the base. Right now.
Michael, move it.
Sanchez had to be forced to cross immediately because it was not strong. The cable was broken, but Schofield managed to escape. Sanchez was caught and arrested by the guards, but the runaway team seems to have escaped. Sanchez, who was caught, was threatened to confess anyone who had escaped from prison, and he mentioned them one by one.
Abruzzi, enough, I gotta take it. Schofield, Burroughs, Zucker, and the Vanilla Ice Kid.
Pope came to the hospital and saw the broken window. He also saw D.B. Cooper was dead there. Pope went to Schofield's cell and saw the hole behind the sink. The whole prison was cheering.
Every last one of
Bellick has now been found, and now with his revenge he will take revenge by arresting the inmates. All the guards were deployed to look for the fugitives. Pope also made a speech that the fugitives could harm civilians and ordered them not to doubt the guards. If you have to shoot, shoot. They scattered as far as possible. But it turns out that the escape team didn't go far. They were still near the prison. Schofield plans to get the police ahead of us. After a while they ran away. Veronica has finally arrived in Montana and is going straight to Stedman's house, seeing the declining vote for the vice president who will nominate for president.
And I can't run a proper campaign.
Samantha's agent also suggested to the vice president to just step down, because the company already thought you would lose. But the vice president steadfastly still believed he would win. Back to the escape team. David's hand was injured when he crossed the fence, and the borough ordered the madman to take off his white shirt because it was so conspicuous. They came to the back of the old factory and found the van there. They went in and Burrow became the driver.
Behind the wheel, Cro-Magnon. Hey.
It appears that Schofield broke the car's window so that he could not be seen. And David, who was injured, unfortunately he accidentally left a trail there. Burrow asks where the key is.
Keys. What? The keys, where are they? I told you.
Abruzzi says it's in the trash near the tree. The madman tried to take it.
Come on.
But it turns out that the key is in Abruzzi's hands. The madman was deceived and they managed to escape, leaving the madman. At the hospital, Pope discovers the fact that the medical room door doesn't look like it's been installed. The guard said we never leave the door open, unless someone did it on purpose.
What? Someone left it open for him.
In the van I seem to be saying why you Abruzzi sitting behind me.
Hey John, I gotta ask you a ridiculous seat.
Knowing that Abruzzi will kill him. And yes, Abruzzi pointed a gun at him. But his smart Teabag handcuffed his hand to Schofield's hand. So Teabag threatens that if Abruzzi kills him now, then Schofield will run with a corpse weighing 77 kg. Teabag swallowed the key to the handcuffs, and Schofield was furious with him. The scene changes in Washington, D.C. in a chemical laboratory. A man says that this poison is very dangerous. Within 5 minutes, someone who drinks it will have a heart attack. Who is the poison for? Bellick and his partner found traces of Schofield's bloodstain, and now they knew that Schofield was on the run in a blue van. At the hospital, Pope interrogated Sarah's doctor. She said it wasn't me who didn't lock the door. Pope said you must have had info you didn't share. If you don't speak up, you'll lose your job. Finally, the assistant says Dr. Sarah is in love with Schofield. Pope thanked him and left. The escape team gets into trouble. They see at the end of the road there is razzia. They are forced to cut the road, and suddenly their car fell into a puddle of mud and the tires skidded. They all came out and tried to push, but they couldn't. They decided to run to the airport, which was only 3 kilometers away. Back in a kitchen, a presidential guard, preparing a drink of mineral water that has been mixed with poison. Schofield tells David, "Our agreement ends here." David went in the opposite direction. Now the escape team is getting more and more overwhelmed when it comes to dealing with patrolling helicopters. They also hide, but they see a sedan-type car being parked, and Sucker also shows his car stealing skills, confidently. Sucker connects the wires, however. It turned out that the car was difficult to start. When checked, it turned out that the car did not have an engine. In a garage, there is a girl looking at her bicycle. Suddenly, a madman comes and he takes his bicycle. Abruzzi's men, who were waiting at the airport, were caught by the airport guard and told him to leave immediately. Abruzzi's men also asked for some time. Bellick and other officers find the team's blue van on the run and reported it to Bellick. The engine was still hot, which meant they were still around. Pope also narrowed the search space and asked the police to surround the area. Another warden reported to Pope that Dr. Sarah's actions were very strange today, and the police were trying to find her. Veronica came to Stedman's house. The vice president is doing his speech, and he's about to drink his mineral water. Suddenly the press got a buzz, and they didn't listen to the vice president anymore. The vice president was also given an information. And he dropped the drinking water. Why doesn't the vice president die while drinking the water? The team escapes into a house. They wait for Schofield and Teabag, who are running very slowly. When Teabag and Schofield came, they also tried to destroy the handcuffs, but Sucker couldn't cut it. Quickly, Abruzzi took the axe and used it. Teabag screamed in pain because it wasn't his handcuffs that were cut, but his hand. They also left the Teabag there. David, who was running alone, saw a broken road stop and got into the truck with the horses. Pope, who was about to ask where Dr. Sarah was, immediately called the governor. But the governor ordered him to watch TV. And how shocking was the news on TV that the President of the United States had died from a heart attack.
And keeping with protocol.
And this time also means that the vice president's mother is being sworn in as a president of the country. It turned out that the mineral water was intended for the president. Samantha's agent came to the president and said to invite for a discussion, but now the president has succeeded in proving that he can serve as president, although not through the election route. The president also won against agent Samantha from the company who previously wanted to fire him.
And you're going to have to talk to my organizers. My schedule is suddenly quite full.
Veronica entered Stedman's house, and it was true that she found Stedman there.
Hello, Terrence.
Schofield said the airstrip was 450 meters away. They ran and they got caught. The police have now surrounded the airport. Abruzzi's men were immediately ready to leave. The team fled, trying to run as fast as possible, but unfortunately the plane left them. Dozens of police cars and helicopters have surrounded the airport, and the team can be seen running towards the field. And the movie is ended.